So welcome everybody to the October 7th, 2024 South Burlington City Council meeting. We shall start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance being led by Councilor Scanlon. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to item 2, which is instructions on exiting the building in case of emergency and review of technology options. Jesse Baker, City Manager.
Thank you. So for those in the room, thank you for joining us in the room. If there's an emergency, you can go out the rear of the auditorium on the left or right, and then turn left or right to get outside. For those joining remotely, thank you for joining us as well. If you'd like to speak during any item on the agenda, you can either turn your camera on and the chair will call on you, or indicate that you'd like to chat or like to comment in the chat, and I will have the chair call on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3, which is agenda review. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in order of the agenda items tonight? I'll take that as a no. Item 4, comments and questions from the public not related to tonight's agenda. Are there any from the public? I see Mr. Doyle moving towards the speaker. Good evening.
Ryan Doyle. I live near City Center. There wasn't really time to speak after it was discussed about a month ago about the Long property. There were some really impassioned statements about biodiversity being in crisis around the globe from Councilor Chalnick, insisting that we really can't use more of that parcel for housing. But he encouraged Councilor Scanlon to go look at it, so I took that as an open invitation to also go look at it. The area in question is mostly the canopy is composed of buckthorn, both common and glossy, which are highly invasive species. There's also Amur maple and European honeysuckle. The predominant plant life in that area is invasive, and like many of our other open spaces, if we don't manage the invasive species, they spread very easily out from those areas. And so if we're going to be conserving space, we need to clear out those species. That said, there are a lot of other parcels in the city. Over half identified are not in the southeast quadrant. I know it sounded like that was the only place to conserve land in the city, but again, 13 out of 25 parcels are not in that area and are closer to where people live. And a good chunk of that parcel, if its own property, would not have ranked on that rubric chart. So I hope that as we go forward in the process and we look at this, we can get a little more scientific data on it instead of the kind of loose gridded breakup that we have in the report from interim zoning. But I do want to clarify that putting houses there would not be hindering biodiversity. It would actually be clearing out the kinds of things that threaten biodiversity.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience wish to speak on an item that's not on the agenda? Anybody online wish to speak? Okay. We will move on to item 5, which is Councilors' Announcements and Reports on Committee Assignments, and then the City Manager's Report. Who would like to start tonight? Elizabeth? Thank you.
Sure, thank you. I got several notes here. Let's see. First off, I did meet with Kelsey regarding the Affordable Housing Committee and the Housing Trust Committees. And we talked about sort of reorienting those as a housing committee. Those folks are meeting together in mid-October and really looking at coming up with some recommendations in support of city plan as a housing committee to bring to council. The potential recommendation might be around committee sizing and around creating a housing trust committee as a subset of the Affordable Housing Committee and renaming it housing. I don't want to preempt the group's dialogue or recommendations, but that was some of the conversation with Kelsey, and then really coming up with goals that could be presented to council. I participated in a BCA tax appeal, and then met with the Charter Committee. The Charter Committee has reorganized and voted Anne Lalonde as the chair of that committee. There is still a vacancy on that committee. The committee asked that I share with council that they did look through a lot of the recommendations to get to the 11/4 date, which was in the resolution that came from council. So from a process standpoint, there were a lot of things discussed, potentially having a couple meetings in October. There is a second meeting scheduled right now, and summarizing that to council on November 4th, doing a deeper dive on pros and cons of the resolution that looks at all resident voting, figuring out what's needed and letting council know a recommendation to move forward. One of the things, among many things that were identified based on information provided by Jesse from Winooski and Burlington, was an interest in the Charter Committee meeting with the city clerks from Burlington and Winooski and any other towns that either have considered or and voted for or voted down all resident voting, but was to talk to the clerks about the operationalizing of that process, which has some nuances to it. And the challenge with meeting with those folks prior to November 4th, which is a key date, is not likely with the election on the 5th. So I guess I'm also passing on a message, maybe managing expectations about a firm recommendation coming on the 4th. At this point. So they are working hard, and we'll have a second meeting in mid-October and go from there. And then I think lastly, I participated with my colleagues Lori and Mike in a blood drive at Chamberlain School in memory of one of our kindergarten educators, Kathy Bewley. And I think we all came out relatively unscathed, but
we looked at each other. We didn't talk to each other.
yet we didn't say a thing. And I think that are my updates. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. Andrew?
Sure. I attended an energy committee meeting where we reviewed the book reviews that the energy committee is hosting and talked about the next ones, and they seem to be pretty successful. The next meeting, the author is actually going to be there to participate in a give and take. So hopefully that will also be well attended. Attended a Safe Route to School meeting to discuss the demo project and kind of dismantling the demo and reviewing some preliminary survey results on that project, which seemed largely positive. So some folks expressed some unhappiness with the bump outs that were, so like the bump out makes the road narrower in certain parts, intended to slow traffic, and there was some feedback that maybe it wasn't accomplishing what was intended to do. Is actually less safe, but we'll have to see what the final survey results show in that regard and then evaluate. I attended an event for the Argahood Collective, which is a group that has formed a 501c3 that's looking to buy about 360 acres, mostly in the southeast quadrant, from Vermont Land Trust. And this is intended to provide kind of a perpetual way for the farmers there to lease that land at a rate that makes it affordable for them to continue to farm that land. And very passionate bunch of folks, and I hope they're successful. I also attended the BCA meeting for the tax appeal. I attended the middle school and high school tour, and was kind of impressed with the facilities actually, and they got these nifty new touch screens in every classroom that the students seem to really enjoy, and they did seem to improve the lighting in various places with new LEDs that made it seem kind of brighter and, a kind of artificial daylighting, I guess, that made the whole space seem more appealing. So that's that. Tim, can I just take a moment? I just want to say one thing on the anniversary of October 7th.
Sure, please.
So just to, mark this day and kind of pray for the innocent lives that were taken that day. Pray for all the innocent lives on all sides of this awful war that have been taken since, and pray for peace.
Thank you, Andrew. Mike?
Let's see. On the 19th of September, I attended the City Center Collaborative Group, a very sort of active group of people, and I urge other people to join who want to contribute to helping make our city center a vibrant place. The main focus was hearing from Tacoma Park in Maryland, which has a long history of having a similar city center group that promotes activities in the center. And the big takeaway, they said that were sort of critical factors for their success, and they're a similar sized community of about 18,000, was having a walking or central pedestrian space. They emphasized that it was very critical as a meeting point. So something that I know we've been talking about, the City Green. They underscored the importance of it as being a dining destination, that was a big draw. So this is going to be, I guess we'll see, helping the city reach out and fill those first floor spaces in the city center. And the third thing they said was very important, that if you're talking about activity and vibrance, and especially if you're talking about generating revenues in terms of local area tax, drawing in people from outside your own community. And here they said a critical role was public transportation. In their case, it's a metro stop that allows people to bring it. And hopefully, I think what we will be able to create here is with this reimagined GMT a route that we'll be talking about later this afternoon, will hopefully serve that same role. So that was a very interesting group and a very committed group of people who participate. Then on the 21st of September, I joined the sextons in cleaning up the headstones at the Eldridge Cemetery. Really committed group of people, and I particularly want to give a big shout out to, the special thanks to the 12 scouts and 5 leaders from the SB Troops 611 and 6110 who gave us 3 hours of their service. Just to return the favor, they're having a fundraising spaghetti dinner on the October 18th at St. John Vianney Parish Hall. Both troops are sponsored by the South Burlington Rotary Club. But it was a beautiful day. It was great to be out there, and we actually, as you saw, there was a story about it on the other paper. On this 24th of September, I attended the Planning Commission, and primarily in capacity as the GMT Commissioner for South Burlington. I applaud the letter they put forward supporting the reimaging of a GMT route through South Burlington, underscoring that it closely aligns with our city objectives, and also I added the comments that it helps strengthen GMT ridership capacity, as well as helping our school manage the shortage of bus drivers if the route is created. Then on the 1st of October, Ilona from the city and I attended the monthly board meeting of the SBBA to talk about GMT and this new route, and to lay out clearly the benefits that would play out to its members, the business community, as it would increase inflow of people's ability to see South Burlington as a destination point, whether you're coming from Williston or Shelburne or other routes into South Burlington City Center and our sort of small business district. And of course, we laid out the benefits they, as residents of South Burlington, with many with kids in the school, would also benefit. They in return responded that they would write a letter of support to the state legislator for what the city of Burlington and the GMT are trying to do here. On the 1st of October, just as again, we had a GMT meeting. Here, I just wanted to mention, in this case as a commissioner, that the public comment period is being extended. They've had quite a lot of turnout, a lot of feedback, and so 4 additional comment periods were included for October. It was supposed to end at the end of September. But what hasn't changed is the deadline, which is they have to turn in a report on what their steps are going to take to the legislature on the 15th of November. As the backup to Helen on the Airport Commission, I took her advice to reach out to Nick Longo, had a meeting with him. It was very, very useful, impressive to learn that many benefits come to South Burlington, even though it's a Burlington-owned airport. Luckily for us, it is the taxes come to us primarily. He mentioned that in terms of local option tax, the local option tax played on 7 million sales of food a year and 30 million in car rental generate revenues for us, as well as the commercial property tax. In this case, you could specify a specific number, $853,000 this past year, or last year. He also shared that the goal is to start this spring the project that would advance sort of the green space and the landscaping along between the airport and the Chamberlain neighborhood. This is all being paid out of the aviation tax of 1%. The aviation tax has to be spent in the airport, so this is what allows them to do it. And I'm glad that we as a council decided at our retreat to add this as a priority for our city calendar this year to work with the airport on this project. He also mentioned that there are now currently 68 houses in the noise mitigation program. They're looking for a way to accelerate bringing houses in. Obviously, there's a funding component there, as I was mentioned in the paper. He referenced an $18 million funds that they're trying to access from the Department of Defense for this. And he also mentioned that the noise expansion map is done. This was also covered in their minutes of their meeting from the 4th of September, and that there'll be a public meeting to share the findings of this map based on the last year's collections of soundings, as I understood it, at Chamberlain on the 24th of October. I remember when Helen was here, I asked her about had she heard any news about whether the flights to New York, in particular the JetBlue flights, would be reinstated. I had a chance to ask him, and he said no. But what he did say is Florida is destination number one for flights out of BTV. So that, for me, was sort of an interesting little footnote. On the 28th of September, I was at Orchard with Elizabeth for coffee with our residents, coffee with Councilor Paradigm that we had, and then on the 5th, I was with Lori at Chamberlain, where we basically met with people. Between the two meetings, I would say it was a group, again, of some new faces, but also there are obviously some people who seek the opportunity to come and regularly to just pursue particular areas of interest to them and to have a more open, free discussion that is possible than at the city council meetings. Issues that came up were Hubbard Park, PFS in our drinking and groundwater, a reference to F-35 issue, and also there was a request for better information sharing to the public from the city and the city council. And in that same voice, pretty much everyone said they welcomed this coffee with councilors and as a way of helping share this information. And then the last thing is on the 28th of September, I went to the Park Hop Brewer at Hubbard's Recreation National Park. It rained. I really give Adam and his team a great kudos. It rained all morning, but yet they still pulled it off. There were a bit of puddles, a little bit sloppy, but it was definitely a good time. My wife participated in the painting, and we have a nice little watercolor painting now of the last days of summer, and she's caught it very well, looking to the fall and winter coming along. I had a good chance to meet some new people and talk with other people that I knew, and listen to excellent music from Emma Lou and the Beast. So a lot of fun activities that make our city so fun I got to participate in. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Lori?
I'll be a little bit briefer, I think. Well done, Mike. First of all, I hope you guys all like it. I like this new layout a lot. It's really nice. It feels like I can see everybody much better. So that's great. This evening we had a BCA meeting trying to lay out for the the election coming up in November, and that was pretty interesting. We had a discussion about who could be at the election sites regarding justice of the peaces that are on the ballot, but not incumbents. And it was an interesting conversation. I also did the school tour with Andrew and was really impressed, and was at the Coffee with the Council on this last Saturday. Lively discussion about the F-35s. There was a conversation about not just the PFAS that leaked from the fire suppression system, but the groundwater PFAS that is being apparently perpetually put into the Belter Farm area, Belter Brook, and citizen concerned about how that's being monitored. And there was one woman who was really wanted to encourage us to use new forms of communication to get contact with the public. And I was suggesting that maybe she get in touch with Andy and actually get engaged in helping us do that, possibly. And she also had applied for the Affordable Housing Committee, did not get the position, felt like she had said, I'd love to do something else, and that nobody had reached out to her. So I had a conversation with her about how to further get engaged. And then lastly, the movie The Quietest Year played on Sunday in Burlington, and I'm working with the library staff to potentially get it shown in the auditorium here sometime in October or early November. And I think that's it for now.
Thank you, Lori. So it was a good 2 weeks without a city council meeting, amazingly. It felt like there was time off, but yet I'm looking at all the things that I did, and but it still was a nice 2 weeks. I attended a public arts committee meeting where they were prepping for the installation and grand opening of the exhibit, the permanent installation at J.C. Park. If you haven't been to J.C. Park since Saturday when we had our official grand opening, please drop by. And the best time to go, if it's sunny, is around 5 o'clock at this time of year, because the rays of the light are coming down at an angle and going right through this new abstract, color-filtered, shapely arrangement, and the light goes through these different filters and then presents a colored shadow on the ground behind it. And the same thing at sunrise, I'm pretty sure. So we had a good group of people. There were a couple of short speeches, and the artists introduced themselves and talked about the work they did. And it was sunny, and as the day got later, it just really got really beautiful. It's a nice work of art. I really appreciate it, and it was great to be there. I also attended a steering committee meeting, as most of you did as well. I was a little bit late because I didn't realize it started a little bit early, but next time I hope I'll get you there. I attended a presentation here by the Rich Earth Institute from Brattleboro, where they were advocating for a thing called P-cycling, which is diverting urine streams at home into containers to put into your gardens or into your lawns. And I'm just going to say this is a really cool idea, and think of it as a way to reduce your water bill if you're using more than the minimum. Okay? And they have equipment to help you harvest this and distribute it across your yard. I also attended a planning commission meeting, and I also went to a UVM women's soccer game where they were ahead 2-0, and then it was 2-1, then it was 2-2, and then at the last 5 minutes, our goalie caught the ball and tried to roll it to one of our defenders, but there was a forward there who trapped it and kicked it the 25 yards right into the goal, and that was the end of that game. But they did better yesterday. They won 3-1. I also attended a leadership meeting with the school board chair and the superintendent and city manager, Jesse. And I drove by the park hop at Hubbard Park, and I saw the band performing, but my wife was with me, and she said, "Drive on." drive on. She wouldn't let me stop. I'm like, but there's beer and there's no. And it was like, it was getting towards the end. It was getting dark, you know, she goes, I just want to go home. like, okay, next time they have one, I'm going to try to make it. And I also attended the BCA tax appeal review for the Walgreens. And most of you were there for that as well. So, and I want to echo Andrew's comments about the significance of this state and the ongoing violence in the Middle East and how it seems to be engulfing more than just, Israel, Gaza, and Lebanon at this point. So anyway, let's move on to the city manager's report.
Great, thank you. So I shared, or the city attorney shared this with the council earlier, but I want to share with the community as well. The owners of 835 Heinsberg Road appealed the court decision to the U.S. Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court announced today that it denied the petition to be heard. So that case is now over. Starting this week, neighbors may see some special scooters scooting around all of our sidewalks and shared use paths. It's a company called Street Scan that Public Works has contracted with to do the inventory of the pavement condition index for our sidewalks and shared use path for our 55 miles of sidewalks and 25 miles of shared use paths. That data will all be aggregated and then informed our capital improvement planning moving forward.
Jesse, when do you think we'll have that?
So the data collection starts the end of this week. I'm not sure how long it will take to go over all of it and then do the analysis from there.
I guess will we have it in time for budget discussions?
I imagine not, or at least very preliminarily, but I will check that. Last August 23, the council approved us applying for a municipal energy resiliency project grant. This is a grant the state offered to do weatherization of municipal buildings and facilities. So we applied for that grant. It's a two-phase grant. First was assessment, second is construction. So we received back those assessments and have recently applied for a $61,000 grant to do the improvements at Fire Station 2. So we will hopefully receive that and again continue checking off those government operations sections of our climate action plan. Jennifer shared some summer reading statistics with us. So summer reading program is obviously the program we run through the summer. This month, our participation was up 11% from last year, and August saw our biggest number of visitors to the library with over 10,000 visitors to the library. So good job, Jennifer. Similarly, want to shout out our Recreation and Parks team on Saturday. They are having their Girls Sports Day. We have 55 young women signed up for this day that is going to cycle them through the opportunity to try a variety of different sports, primarily with players from the UVM collegiate sports teams and the St. Mike's collegiate sports teams. We thought that the sports teams would send a coach and one or two athletes. The entire sports teams are coming. So it's going to be a great opportunity for those college students to connect, as well as for our South Burlington young women. Mike mentioned the noise exposure maps coming up, public meetings on the noise exposure maps coming up. So those are August 23rd at 4 for the technical committee, and then at 6:30 at Chamberlain School to review those maps. October 23rd.
24th, I think, is 23rd is technical, 24th, I think, is the school, if I'm not mistaken.
I think what Nick shared with us today, Paul, I'm looking at you. What Nick shared with us today was October 23rd at 4 is the technical advisory committee, and then at 6:30 at Chamberlain is the first meeting, and then October 24th at 6:30 is the same meeting at Winooski High School. So folks can go to either one. Yeah, folks can go to either one. And we will be putting that out through City News to the community as well.
Mr. Chamberlain?
Chamberlain on the 23rd. Yep. And then finally, we had talked about having an update from the partners on Longview at this meeting, following the VHCB Vermont Housing and Conservation Board meeting. That did not take place, so I wanted to give the community a brief update tonight in anticipation of the partners doing a full update at your next meeting. South Burlington Land Trust, Roseanne Greco is here if you have questions for her as well. But what we wanted to share at a high level is that the South Burlington Land Trust reported that the project did not go to the October 2nd VHCB board meeting as planned. There was a delay in receiving the appraisal. We have now received that. The city received that on October 2nd, and we are reviewing that. There's also some concern about the number of housing units in the contingency that the council put in their letter of support, the 16 housing units. So we are working with the partners to find a time that works for Habitat, South Burlington Land Trust, NEAT, and VHCB and city staff to come together and meet and review all of that information, as well as review, hopefully, the timeline and the survey, and bring you back a comprehensive update at your next meeting. So wanted to share that. Roseanne, is there anything else you wanted to share? Okay. And that's all I have. I think we can wait. We haven't reviewed it yet.
Good, thank you, Jesse. So now we're going to move on to the consent agenda, which is, of course, item A, consider and sign disbursements. Item B, receive the July and August 2024 financials. Item C, authorize the award of the Adelphia Cable Pond retrofit scoping study to Fuss and O'Neill. Item D, approve a highway impact fee credit request for Snyder Braverman SP-24-23 at 200 Garden Street. And item E, authorize the South Burlington Water Department to award the Heinsberg Road valve replacement project to Masterson and Son Excavating. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you very
I
much.
just want to thank Monica Ingalls for being here on the stormwater side and Jay for being here on the water project side as well. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And can I thank Martha, as always, for answering my questions? Thank you.
So moving on to item 7, which is discussion of the FY26 budget, hold a community listening session to hear from the community on their priorities for the FY26, that's July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2026 city budget, with Martha Machar, Finance Director. Come on down.
So Martha, you signed on? So this is a new aspect of the FY26 budget process that you adopted this year. Obviously, we have our public hearing requirements later in the process, but the council expressed some strong interest in hearing from the community before the budget was finalized by the leadership team and presented to the council. So with your permission, interest, Martha will do a quick high-level summary of the projections where we currently are, pose some key questions, and then can hear from the community. Martha, I'm going to turn off your video. Oh, nope, I can't do that.
Martha Machar, Finance Director. Sorry, it took me a while to log in and share my screen. So I'm here to just provide an overview of what we presented on September 16, just providing an overview of where we have been and what the FY26 projections are. So the goal for this section is for us to provide history on property tax and utility rates increases. Also provide the composition of city budget and provide the FY26 baseline projections. And for the council to listen to residents' priorities and goal for FY26 budget. What it is not is a question and answer. Leadership team is not here today because it is not meant for the leadership team to be providing answers as the questions are raised by either the council or the residents. We are all here to just listen to what the residents' priorities are and what their goals are for FY26. That will be incorporated into FY26 budget. The composition for the city budget, which is just include the CIP, capital improvement plans, which is a 10-year budget that fund capital investment in road, sidewalks, path building, fleet, water and wastewater lines, and water district, water treatment facilities. It is big funding of the bigger projects citywide. And it also includes general fund budget, which is mostly funded with property tax revenues. So it's revenues and expenses, and about 50% or 60% is general fund of that. And also include enterprise funds budget, which are rates funded budgets, including wastewater, stormwater, and drinking water. So the history on property tax rates is just provided up here, which include what the tax rates were in FY19 through FY25. And as you can see, FY19 through 2021, they were around 0.5, range from 0.5 to 0.55. And due to a reappraisal in FY22, it went down to 0.4 and has been growing since then to right now 0.51. So it has not even reached what the rates were in FY21. And also included at the bottom here is just a comparison of our neighbors and what their tax rates are, including their total grand list. And if you look at that, we are right in the middle of, we are not the highest, we are not the lowest, we are in the middle. And so these charts just show us what the composition of our expenditures is just for the general fund. So when you looked at the general fund, FY25 budget is around 35 million. And out of the 35, the biggest department that is being funded of that is police department is 22%, followed with by the fire and public works, which are services providing departments around the city. All the other departments are less than 10%. And looking at how all the activities or all the projects provided done here by the city are funded. About 60% is property tax and 40% is non-property tax revenue. And those have also been growing over the years. On this slide, you will see the rate increases for our utilities, drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater. And these increases generally have ranged from 2. If you look at the drinking water, it's just 2.9, 2.8%. And the last 2 years, FY24 and 25, they've gone up. And that is for drinking water, it went up to include the capacity to build the new water tower on Dorset Street. Wastewater, the increase is still, if you look at that on FY24 and 25, going up to 8%, that is to build the capacity to pay back the bond that was approved last year for the pump station, Bala Bay, our biggest pump station. stormwater hasn't increased as much. It's just been around 1 and 3, and that is just the personnel and related benefit costs. These key questions were also included on the budget projection that was reviewed to the council on the September 16. And they are still, they are the questions that we will be answering as we build the budget until it's approved next year. And those include, how do we continue to provide municipal services at the level and quality the community expects while addressing a portability challenge in our community and the state? Also included in here the question of how do we balance the core municipal services with the investment. We know we are a growing city, and there are always different initiative coming up. Some have already been incorporated into the budget, and some are in discussion. How do we balance funding those and also providing municipal services? And in here as well is, are there other different approaches to revenue generation as we come up with projects to pursue? How do we fund those? Are there different approaches that we can look into other than property taxes? And then the other thing is, how do we manage our expenditures? How do we budget our expenditures? Which also might mean including a vacancy saving line. We know our surpluses that we've had over the years have been funded with saving from vacancies. Should we continue to fully fund them, or should and then have a surplus at the end, or just build in that saving into the budget and not have as much surplus as we have had? And the last one is, we do know that we have 2 union negotiations currently on the way, and we know that they will not be executed by the end of the year. How do we actually build the budget not knowing what those costs would be? So FY26 baseline projection, which was also presented, the numbers that are included in the projection and it's also attached to this PowerPoint leads to a 7.31 increase, and that is with fully funding FY26 CIP as approved this year with FY25, FY26 CIP that was approved as part of the FY25 budget. Also assume that we are going to be maintaining current operating level of the expenditures with a pre-minimal increases for the repairs and utilities. On the wages, we have assumed a 3.5 increase for the 2 unions that are currently in negotiations, and they will be expiring at the end of the fiscal year. 16% increase in the health insurance cost, and also fully implementing the firefighters union that was signed into and become effective FY25. It also includes 400,000 saving vacancy into the numbers that led to that 7.31. What is not included is the cost that will come as a result of negotiating the 2 or settling the 2 unions that are currently in negotiation. So on this screen as well, you would see with pre-aggressive projection of grand list growth of 1.5, what 1%, 2%, 3%, and 4% increases on the tax rate would generate on top of what is currently on top of the current tax rate generation.
So Martha, before you go on, I just want to mention to the community, the council obviously already knows this, that the goal the council set for us at the last regular council meeting is to bring 3 scenarios to the community of a 3.5% tax rate increase, a 4.5% tax rate increase, and a under 5.39% tax rate increase. So we are working down from that 7.3% increase down to hit those scenarios. Sorry.
Thank you, Jason. That's important. So this is just the overview of what we prepared for the resident and the council. And the main question for tonight for the resident to consider as they provide their priorities and goals for FY26 are in here. And these questions were also included, the question that we asked on the survey that went out to the public to answer. So we wanted to give people that did not have that opportunity to fill the survey the same opportunity to give us the same answers that the other people have provided.
So I will share with the council that we have 57 responses to this survey right now. We are keeping that open through at least another week or two after tonight in case folks are listening tonight or listen to the coverage of tonight and want to complete that survey as well. And then we will provide the full report to you as part of our budget presentation as well. So I think that, thank you, Martha. I think the task really is to hear from the community, and we are all ears. Thanks, Martha.
Now's the time.
Can I clarify, Jesse, where the survey link is and where it's been publicized?
So it's on the main page of the website. So it's one of the scrolling main stories on the website. It's also gone out in ads in the other paper. It's gone through our social media sites. We've shared it with partners in the hopes that they would also help spread it through their networks. And I believe it was co-promoted in the school newsletter as well.
There's a budget survey right there.
Yep.
Has it been published in the Front Porch Forum?
I don't know. We certainly could do that.
Yeah.
It's been in city news repeatedly, yep.
Should I stop sharing or leave the questions up?
Do you want to stop sharing? Do you want her to stop sharing the slides?
No, I'd
so you
leave
can
that
see
up there for
people?
now, yeah, so people can see it. So if they want to reference some of those examples. So is there anybody in the audience that's here tonight that wants to comment? Linda, you had your hand up first. Come on down.
Travis, could you just, slide that down a little bit so they can see everybody? Thanks.
I made the light bright. Hi, Linda Bailey, Chamberlain District. I actually wrote some things down this time, so hopefully I'll get through them. A lot of the thoughts that I was having about the upcoming city budget are things that are reflected in what Martha just presented. But I wanted to start off with talking about a couple of really good things that I think the council has been doing. Having the Saturday meetings at the schools, I think that is a great way to reach out to the community. I know when I was working full-time and had a family, to attend things like this simply wasn't on the view screen. Weekends work better. Also, having the city council meetings and different types of meetings and stuff publicized on places like Front Porch Forum, I think that can reach a lot more citizens. And even if you're not getting a lot of feedback about that yet, I think it makes an opportunity for people to feel more included in what's going on in the governance of the city. I know from things that I've read in the past that it can take a year or more to start seeing a lot of feedback on a new thing that's happening, like the publications of this. On the budget, balance is the biggest part. We know that school budgets are probably going to be pretty harsh on everyone, and that is the biggest part of property taxes, I know, but it does hurt everyone. One of the things that not only the school can do, but the city can do is try to look at wants versus what are actually needed. As was pointed out, the things that the cities have to provide are the police, the fire, water and sewer, the roads. Those are the needs that the city needs to keep going well for the people who live here. Then there comes things that are create a sense of community, like our wonderful library here, the great job that Wexham Park have been doing with their programs this summer. I've been seriously impressed, both with attending some of them, like Family Paint Night. I've been to one, been trying to get into another one to bring more grandchildren. That thing is full like that. So things like that, they're really getting a lot of attention. Other things that are wants, please put them off until we've got the schools settled a little better. That's going to, I think, have to come out of the state government to figure out how to budget our schools better and not make them so horrendously expensive. There might even be some things that are in the capital plan that are not current needs, but could be put off for a while because they're wants. Check my next, ARPA. I don't know for sure if there's ARPA money left, but if there is, use it on capital needs like you did with the ambulance, that sort of thing. Things that'll benefit the most possible number of citizens in the city. If there are ARPA dollars left after that, maybe consider spreading the wealth a little bit. There are things that could be done to help people more across the city, like just as an idea of something that I've done with homes that I've owned that made a big difference is adding more insulation in attics. Perhaps have a program for older homes and apartment buildings where we could help to fund. This might something that could be worked with what's it called? Efficiency Vermont has a specific add-on to Efficiency Vermont stuff for South Burlington homeowners, residents. These sort of things could help with our overall goals of climate change mitigation because it will help more places. Not only makes their homes, as my experience shows, more comfortable to live in, lowers your heating costs, which means you're using less fossil fuels or electricity or whatever you heat your home with. So less is more in this case. Finally, just please consider the wants versus the needs when you're looking at the things in our budget coming up. What will benefit the most members of the community in what you do? I know that if you direct Jessie and her team to be looking at that through that type of lens, they'll do a great job with it. Thanks, everyone, for listening to me.
Thank you, Linda. Who's next? Is anybody online interested in speaking at all?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, come on down, Roseanne. Did you raise your hand? Come on down.
While Roseanne's coming down, I just want to acknowledge that Tim Warren from the school board is here. We really appreciate the partnership in listening to the feedback on the comprehensive city budget, not just the city and school budget. Thanks for being here, Tim.
Hi, I'm Roseanne Gregory.
Is it on? Green light.
Oh, now it's, that's why I couldn't hear you, Linda. But what I heard of Linda, I agreed with. So I didn't come prepared, especially as prepared as Linda was. But I'm looking at the questions up there, and since I'm here, I can't stop from talking. So what about the city government matters most to you, and what do you want the council and staff to know about your experience in South Burlington? So the thing that I loved about South Burlington when I moved here 17 years ago was that the city was very approachable. When I called, a human being answered the phone right away. When I went to meetings, it felt like I was listened to. Not that I'm not now, but over the years, I've noticed a big difference and a distance between, at least between me and the city. And when I call now for the city and for anything, I hardly ever get a human being that answers right away. I get press 1, press 2. And that's what I experienced in other places I lived. And that disappoints me a bit. But it ties into something else, and it's about what you talked about in the budget. And that is, as we grow, there are costs associated with that. You talked about how much income would come in with X% of growth, but you didn't talk about what it costs us. And as more people come here, there are more services demanded. You need more staff. You need more police, more fire, more city staff. And the costs are rarely factored into that. And I think that reflects, I think, in my personal experience, what I'm dealing with in the city. And it's that we've gotten so big, but we don't have the staff to accommodate it. Even when I was a counselor, I didn't think we had enough staff for the size, and now I'm pretty certain we don't. Anyway, that to me is, that's my experience. Any service you'd like the city to stop providing a heck no. You do a great job in what you do now. Please don't stop. I think there's more you can do, but I don't think you can. I don't think there's enough money to do it. And that's my concern. As we grow, we're going to have more. One of my biggest concern, because I have a husband who's a school bus driver, is our schools, that they are overcrowded. There's not enough school bus drivers, not enough school buses, not enough room for the students. And as we bring more people in here, that problem's not going to go away. It's going to get worse. And so I have a real concern that we are growing beyond our ability to take care of ourselves. Years ago, we had a path to sustainability, which sort of fell apart. But I don't think we're on the path to sustainability. I think just the opposite. And that, I think, is very concerning. I don't think we're unique, but I think paying attention to it and looking at can we take care of who we have right now before we bring more people in and can't take care of them. I know that our healthcare system, which you don't have anything to do with, but that's certainly suffering from it. The only thing I noticed in the budget I didn't see when you had the capital expenditures is natural capital. That is becoming more and more acknowledged as a real benefit, and that's the natural world. So we're planning for capital things like roads and buildings and the built environment, but maybe planning for the environment that exists now and preserving it. But thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the audience? Mr. Doyle, coming up.
Ryan Doyle. I live near City Center, and I don't know if this would really help much this year given how short of a time frame we have, but we're in a really unique position where our school district municipality and our civic municipality have exactly the same footprint and geographical area. And so I think because we are all, as residents, paying into both of them, it would be interesting to look and see if there are places where the school does things that aren't really education focused, but are things that support that infrastructure that might be able to be provided for cheaper through city structures that might be able to load balance certain staff time or equipment differently. I know nothing about what goes into those things at the school level. It's probably not a this year thing to figure out, but I want to plant that seed in your heads. The other thing I want to mention is some of you might recall when Essex Junction voted to become its own municipality separate from the town. That came with a tax increase for them, but it came with a much bigger tax increase for the town because dense development subsidizes sprawl development. We have a lot of sprawl development already in this city that is subsidized. If you look at what people's tax assessments are per acre or per square foot, you will find that in many cases, older homes on smaller lots are paying more per square foot or per acre. That can be really frustrating when you're already in an old home that needs more maintenance work. And so the reality is that our structure of assessing value is fairly broken and actually shifts the cost burden onto poorer residents in lower income areas. And so we know that particularly in the southeast quadrant, that the assessments are fairly low for the cost to deliver services, and that the environmental impact of those neighborhoods and homes is much higher because of greater land consumption, greater building material consumption, greater areas to heat, greater distances to travel, that there are a lot more negative externalities that come from that type of development style. But there is no mechanism to actually extract those negative externalities and not have them be subsidized by other people who are walking everywhere or living in very old houses. And so that's something I would really like to also plant a seed in everyone's mind as we move forward, that past, none of you were here for this, but past people made decisions to build out infrastructure and allow certain development that has never paid its weight. And that is weighing on us very much right now. And I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience tonight? And nobody online?
Megan Emery.
Okay. Well, this was a,
No, Megan Emery just turned her camera on.
Megan Emery. We see you, Megan, but you're muted.
I can change that too. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to add a word that I have heard from state legislators, and I think that we all in our city, but also in cities and towns throughout the state, need to be aware of as we consider, the concerns faced by our school board and of course our taxpayers with regard to our schools. I think it's really important for us to understand that school budgets and school funds specifically do not only fund our academic programs and other school functions, but also human and health services. And that is something that our lieutenant governor has pointed out and that state legislators point out as well, that in our state, and this needs to be understood, that this is a unique situation, our education fund is also funding human and health services. In other states, there are two separate budget lines that fund school districts. And I just want us to really hear that and take that into account when we are, as town leaders, city leaders, and state leaders, and the public faced again with the budget decisions that we will be faced with next March. But I also think you, as city leaders, need to take it into account when you are hearing from constituents about the crunch that they're feeling. The state needs to be transparent and to fully disclose to Vermonters how schools are being funded. And really, I would say, take the pressure off of you to make that square. That falls to the state. We need firefighters, we need police officers, and we need to tackle all of the big goals that you have set as your priorities. And we also need to fund our schools, but we cannot do that on the back of our municipal budget. We need to go and make it clear that our schools are also providing human and health services and that our property taxes going towards the schools are funding human and health services. So I wanted to take this opportunity to say that and to encourage you to, I think that you have presented responsible numbers. So I encourage you to move forward with your priorities. Our city is well served. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Is there anybody else online? I don't see anybody. And nobody else in the audience? Well, this is a listening session for the community to come to us. And so we've had a few people. I wish we would have had more, but we do have the 57 previous responses in the survey, and the survey's ongoing, right? And what was the date you said we would close that? Or?
So we'll keep it open for at least another 2 weeks beyond now, close up around the end of October.
And we're going to keep advertising it in the city news, and maybe we'll put it on Front Porch Forum. Has it been in the other paper as well?
Yep, we've had ads in the other paper.
We did have an ad, yeah, okay. So remember that the other paper gets mailed to every address in the city. Please, people, do not throw that paper in the recycling. There is some really good news in there and lots of excellent details about community events and the school events and school sports. And, a lot of work goes into creating that paper. So, and I think the reporting is fair. And plus, we take out ads that we pay for in there for the city, right, to communicate with the public. So please, just flip through it until something catches your interest, okay? That'd be great. Did council want to add anything to this session at all, or? Martha, did you want to add something else?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Martha.
Thanks, Martha.
Thank you. So now we're going to move on to item 8, which is received the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission annual report and hear about related issues with Charlie Baker and probably Chris Shaw as well, I would suppose.
So Chris is raising his hand. Charlie is telling me he's on his way. He needs 15 minutes. I believe he was at Winooski before us tonight.
Oh, okay. So why don't we jump down to item 9? Is that okay?
Sure.
All right, so we're going to jump down around. We're going to go to 9, which is discussion and possible action, approve a request to Green Mountain Transit for modifications to their reduction plans and a reimagining of connectivity in South Burlington with Alana Blanchard, Community Development Director, and Paul Connor of Planning and Zoning. Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, Alana Blanchard.
Paul Connor.
So we're here tonight to talk about Green Mountain Transit. We have been meeting with them regularly at the behest of your Green Mountain Transit representative, Council Member Mike Scanlon. And I believe you received, or I know you received, a presentation last month at the beginning of the month regarding ongoing work to understand the reductions in transit service that Green Mountain Transit has proposed and have been put out to the public, and also to assess what options are, what our data tells us, and to work towards better transit in the community. So you have before you a letter that reflects that work. It also reflects communications with neighboring communities and regular meetings with the school district, who has also been facing challenges with transportation. And so briefly, just to outline the points of the letter requests a modification to the number 11. So rather than completely eliminating the 11, it would be a reconfiguration of that route so that it directly connects the two highest density population centers in South Burlington, one on Shelburne Road and one on one being City Center, and connects them to UVMMC, the main pavilion. So the current 11 does go to the University Medical Center. And this also requests that that service be more frequent than it is today, so that it be a service that is useful to the ridership and attractive to riders. And so based on the data that was collected by Paul and other regional members and analyzed by the consultant, this route was both in the comprehensive plan, but also offered the most ridership. The additional recommendations include to continue to serve the airport, which the 11 served, but now there would not be served with the elimination of the 11, and to also serve Market Street. That has been brought up over and over by the public, and is also in the comprehensive plan. And I'll see if Paul has anything to add, but I would just say that the provision of transit is heavily supported by the planning board as per their letter to Green Mountain Transit. So.
I would just add, just briefly, that based on the analysis that was performed, that this routing, we think, really strengthens the network by creating more of a web of connections right in the core of Chittenden County. So it really, as we looked through it, of all the different connection points that it creates within our community, but also amongst communities, that this isn't, while this serves South Burlington, this is a network improvement from the way we've been looking at it and talking with our partners about it.
Yeah. So we're here to answer questions.
Did you want to look at the diagram with us?
Sure. Are you?
One moment, please. Oh, not that one. One moment, please. Share something else.
Your call is important to us.
This one. There we go. So On this diagram, the purple represents the existence of housing in our community. The more intense the purple, the more there is, tending towards blue, the more density of housing there is. The orange represents employers. And then as you can see on here, there are three potential routes. The blue going north-south is the existing Shelburne Road route. The red going east to west is similar to the existing Williston Road route, but shows how the airport could be served, and also shows a couple of alternatives through city center, either using Market Street or Williston Road, as is reflected in the letter. That's a level of detail that would really be, as Green Mountain Transit figures out their routing and their schedules and their meetup points and all that kind of work. And then the conceptual new route, as we talked about with you a few weeks ago, would begin in the Farrell Street area, serve that area and connect to the Shelburne Road route, go up Swift Street and therefore serve Veterans Memorial Park, go past the high school and middle school, and all of the services, businesses, and medical services along Dorset Street, and of course City Center. And then again, a couple of different options on routing through City Center, then up to the medical center and connections into Burlington and beyond.
So the lime green route, which is the new proposed route, that's a brand new route, right? And
Currently, the portion from, as Alana said, from UVM Medical Center to down Dorset Street to Kennedy is served by the 11.
Okay, right.
But the portion where it goes past Kennedy and goes over to connect the other half of our city on and parts south on Shelburne Road would be brand new.
Right.
And that's really to achieve the two goals of connectivity from our Shelburne Road neighbors, not through the downtown Burlington Transit Center and back, and also to get as many as of our school population onto the bus to the middle school and high school campus.
And the other changes, as Ilona mentioned, is greater frequency in the first part of the day and towards the end of the day to really make it where the 11 is really quite infrequent. So you really have to plan your days quite far in advance.
So the 11 is the orange line, right? And does it go to the airport today?
Today, the 11 goes from UVM Medical Center and parts west along Dorset Street, down to Kennedy, then up Kennedy all the way to the airport, then across White Street, back down Heinsberg Road over to Kennedy again, and then looping back. So it's a very different route that is serving. Whoa,
okay, so these are all new routes. Oh, okay, I guess
following up this way here, this arc.
Yep.
And that's the route that really got targeted by VTrans and for
just
GMT to look at.
To add on that is, I think, important, and again, speaking just as the VTrans really told GMT with no sort of choice in the matter, 11 is just not having the ridership it needs, and it's something that cannot be warranted to continue to fund because VTrans is the pass-through from federal funds. One thing they did point out also in looking at the 11 was that the airport's flights tend to be early morning, late night, as we all know, and those don't really align themselves with GTM or GMT's traditional bus routes. Though one thing we found out in the survey that the GMT did is there are people who work at the airport who do rely on the buses to get there. So that's sort of the split.
I think TSA's got to be there 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30. I mean, along with a lot of other people too, right? That's the morning shift, right? Yeah.
Do we have a sense of how many residents living along Kennedy would be impacted by, losing the 11, say, and then, unless I guess you live really close to Dorset, kind of being quite far from the new proposed routes?
We do have some analysis that I can pull up of how many households are within a quarter mile of the existing 11. It, on paper, interestingly, serves the most, I believe, of all of the routes. But in practice, the ridership is very, very low. And so we don't know all the sources of that. It may be a matter of while homes are geographically close to Kennedy Drive, the actual distance to walk to get to a road that goes up to Kennedy and then over to a bus stop may be long. It may be a question of frequency of service, the fact that it's a large loop and so you only get it in one direction. So it was the highest on paper number, and the ridership numbers were very low after leaving Dorset Street. I can pull up the exact number, but that's what the interesting juxtaposition of the data tells us.
Is GMT required, if they accept federal funds, to like meet some standard of proximity to, housing density for maximum distance that somebody has to walk before they catch a bus? I'm just curious. I don't know.
In federal funding, there are these so-called stick factors, which basically suggest certain degrees of efficiency. And the more efficient you are in the use of budget bus hours, the more money you access. So the goal is to sort of incentivize public transit to dense areas. And one of the benefits, as our colleagues here told us, is that this should increase ridership, at least potentially on this new route, which would then be beneficial to GMT in meeting those federal so-called stick factors, which then just strengthens the bus service collectively. So it's not only to the benefit of South Burlington, but to our neighbors as well.
I mean, are they thinking about reducing the size of their vehicles so they're not full city buses? Because, I mean, to be honest, when I've seen a few times when there are buses that have at least 5 or 6 or 10 people, but I see a lot of buses where there's only 1 or 2 people. And sometimes I wonder if they had smaller vehicles that didn't require a CDL, that would be easier to get drivers for those. I don't know. And that's not really an item for discussion here, but I guess our job is to discuss and see whether we want to approve this request. And I mean, it makes sense for our goals for, trying to get some of our students on buses for those areas as well. And also, I mean, we have an enormous density right on Market Street, right? Which is going to be growing even more. And especially in other areas of City Center. City Center, as time goes on, but, routes can be changed over time. So.
And as I think Jesse also shared, the goal is to have just one bus system go into the city center, as opposed to one for the UVM students, one for the medical facility, and then also saying to our other residents, sorry, you can't get on that bus because you're not a member or employee of. So this hopefully would create a more sort of equitable and less congested environment for our city center.
Yeah, Tim, one, I appreciate all the work that went into the letter. I thought it was really well crafted. I sort of went back to city plan too and looked at our goals for carbon emissions and things like that, and cutting out routes. I guess one thing you look at readership, the other or ridership, but the other is looking at density of population, like you mentioned Kennedy Drive, and it doesn't make sense that there might not be more. So what would be the incentive there? And if it goes away, that's a problem. But so to me, from a future standpoint, should this be accepted and promoted, it's sort of how do we keep tabs on where other areas of the city where there is increased interest and density to look at different routing. What I appreciate about this, and this feels awkward because GMT is coming to a lot of communities like ours and looking to cut back. And what I really like about this is that it's a data-driven recommendation. It's an enhancement to South Burlington, but like you said, Paul, it's the network, and it's based on information that will meet GMT's goals as well, and be hopefully something the state can support as well. So I really, really do appreciate the data-driven nature of the recommendations.
I thought Paul would answer, but to your question about future dense areas in the city, I think one thing that in our quarterly meetings we have with GMT, again I'm speaking as the GMT commissioner for South Burlington, it was agreed that as there are developments in the works, dense area developments, GMT will be brought in early to discuss, if you were to have this dense area, what kinds of things would you want in the constructions that would make it easier for public transit. So the idea is to try to work in that factor early, if I'm not mistaken.
No, thank you for sharing that.
I just wish there was a technology change, paradigm shift that we could go through. I mean, because, everybody's got one of these, right? So, I know communities have contracted with Uber and Lyft, right? And have gotten rid of their transit systems, right? And they share the cost, and, so the customer pays part of the cost, and then the city bears part of the cost for those trips, right? But those trips are all dynamic, and they also get everybody where they want to go, right? At the time that they want to go. I'm not saying that's the solution, but it just seems like with the ridership problem that they have, that there's got to be a change that they can look at, some kind of paradigm shift totally. But there is a CATMA summit coming, right?
So there is a CATMA summit coming, but I would also point out that the number 1 is the highest ridership line in the system. So it has about 5 times as much ridership as the 11. And the really great thing about the line that is proposed is that it connects many high on and off locations in the system. So EVM Medical Center, in front of the Shaw's Price Chopper, and in front of the Target are all high locations. And then ideally also the high school could become a high ridership location. So as Paul said, because it connects so many great transfer locations in the system, there's a good opportunity to attract more riders because it's more useful to people. And that's the whole point of public transit, right? Like it makes sense and it works. And the other thing that I would say, just this is like a little plug for transit, is that there is the transit, I think it's called Transit app. It's like a little green squiggly. You can find it on the website, and it will help people plan their trips. It's actually almost, and it gives you the option of Uber if you prefer that, so you can sort of weigh the two options.
So the question I have is, they're going through a reduction planning process, right? And we're asking for a change in connectivity. Do we imagine that their assessment, they're supposed to come in with a larger assessment than usual, right? That this would cause an even larger, so is this going to be more expensive to the city, do you think?
So there's several things happening at the same time. One, they're going to the legislature and asking for more funding from the state. So the VTrans funding formula today is, and I think I'm hoping that Clayton talked about this, is different for urban areas versus rural areas, and they're asking for more parity in that funding level based on population. They've also discovered that they don't need quite as much money as they thought they did. And there is expected to be a reassessment process because the funding formula for GMT has not changed in a long time. And so because it has been static, we are expecting that to change. And I know Jesse will be full on participating in that process.
The other thing I'd add is that I think as they're looking at what do service modifications entail, it isn't, they're trying to be dynamic with it. So they did surveying with communities about are there time of day adjustments that they can make? Are there frequency during of certain portions of a route that they can be creative and think about to maximize the utility of the system for the most number of riders? And what does that mean? So it's not just take the existing and n minus a certain amount, it is adjusting as well. And so I think as this is in the universe of adjusting as well. And so thinking about how do we invest in the system.
So I think the straight up answer is yes, our assessment probably will go up. I think that we also, we know that part of the third thing that's happening at the same time is because they had fare free for so long, as those fares are added back in, we have better ridership data. And as we have talked about before with Clayton and others, our goal here was really to not n minus something in our routes, but figure out what the asks could be that would drive revenue up And I think we've done that through this data-driven analysis. So even if it's not exactly this now, I think a phased conversation with Clayton and his team over time will get us to likely a bigger assessment, but also a financially sustainable GMT, not an eroding financial GMT.
And just said, the assessment model that Alona said has not changed. I think it's like 15 years. Basically, every year, everyone just gets 4% more requests. But it doesn't mean that you're being serviced any better or worse, or those routes are working. The goal is to change the methodology, and this has to be approved by, I believe, all the municipalities that will be in GMT when we come to this decision, because there's also discussion about separating the urban and the rural. It would be to have the methodology more tied to, if you know, to what you use it, the more you invest in it. So basically, have it more tied to sort of actual ridership and use and benefit to each municipality.
I think that accurate ridership numbers is really important as a measurement to understand GMT's cost per passenger per mile.
Yep.
Right? And if that number today, we don't even know what the number is, right? Because we don't know what the real ridership is, right? And if we knew that number today, we might be astounded. You know?
Well, they do have that number.
Yeah, but they can't tell us. I mean, he said it was that their ridership numbers. I mean, you know, they go like this because they were depending upon the bus drivers to count the riders. You know, it's getting better because now they have payment, right? So they know that.
Yes, exactly. They know right now every stop that someone gets on and off on, so you can do projections. You know, this is a heavily used stop. This stop, there's actually very, very little ridership. You know, at some point, you basically redefine what stops you use to ensure greater speed. So to
Right.
your point, it's getting that data to
Yeah.
make those wide decisions. Absolutely.
So reviewing it will be really important, I think, at the next cycle. So does council want to go ahead and approve this request?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think you guys have done awesome work. I think that the Green Line connectivity between Shelburne Road and City Center is potentially a huge asset. I really look forward to seeing what the ridership numbers tell us going forward. And I find myself wondering whether at some point in the future, some sort of shuttle service from City Center to Tilly Drive on 116 wouldn't be able to get a tremendous amount of ridership because it's going right through one of the greatest populated parts of our city, just an out and back in the future. So I just wanted to mention that as something that hopefully this is starting to redesign the system so that it's something that our citizens actually want to use instead of sort of turn their back from because it hasn't been functional. So thank you for the work.
So I think the motion would be to approve the letter of support as drafted.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. And thank you for your work.
Thank
Thank
you
you for
Lana.
your work.
Thank you, Paul.
So let's move backward to item 8, which is,
Oh,
oh,
sorry, Megan had her camera on for a minute there.
she's gone now.
I didn't know who was talking.
Okay.
I'm here.
Hi.
Hi. If you weren't taking public comment on this, I certainly don't want to jump in, but I just wanted to say that I do support the letter, and I hope that, you know, just looking to the future, whenever you have two lines that are running, you know, so they're both running down Market Street, they're both running down Williston Road and down towards city center of Burlington, that is an overlap that perhaps, you know, will pay its dividends now, but in the future, the city center of South Burlington could be, you know, like their DTC, right? Their transit center. So people get off of that line coming from Route 7, running down Dorset Street to Market Street, get off there and then take the number 1, into Burlington. And then that line could then turn, you know, go down Market Street, turn right on Harnsburg Road and go down Kennedy Drive. But there is a way, if financially we get to the point where we become a destination, and let's hope we are, in our city center, that there could be a way for it to become financially feasible to serve all those people on Kennedy Drive. So, and hopefully more would be wanting to go to city center or to Route 7, which I think could be of interest to those people too. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're backing up to receive the CCRPC annual report and hear about related issues. Charlie Baker, good evening. Chris Shaw, good evening.
Thank you very much.
We're right on time. And you are too.
Apologies for not being here as soon as you could have been ready.
I think you need to turn your microphone on, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you for the time on the agenda. Apologies, I'm trying to, Winooski, Milton, and South Burlington in one evening, but here we are. So in your packet, you got the annual report from us. I'll just review that pretty quickly. For those of you that are newer to City Council, I try to visit every fall as kind of a customer service check-in to see how we're doing in terms of providing services to the city and get any feedback from you. So that's what this report is our services that we provided to you last fiscal year. And then I do have a second topic, maybe a third topic, to talk with you this evening about. One is about an equity policy advisor potential position, and the other is about Act 181 implementation, which was the Act 250 bill that the legislature passed this spring. So I'll hold those two thoughts. I'll get to them in a couple minutes. First, I'll review the report quickly. The first page gives you background on the Regional Planning Commission, history, and our board, and how we last fiscal year we spent or invested about $6 million in the community. About 500,000 of that was from the municipalities that matched the rest of the $5.5 million in federal and state investment. And then at the bottom are your representatives on our board, including Chris Shaw, who is our current chair. Well, thank you, Chris. And also, you have a lot of staff members that are very active members in our committees and help with our work and your work, so thank you for that. On the second and most of the third page are specific activities that we did in the city last fiscal year. I'm not going to review all of these, but active transportation plans, the bike ped bridge, doing some traffic modeling on city center, brownfields, energy work, some other just general technical assistance on a wide variety of things, a lot of them transportation, and happy to take any feedback on any of those projects, either specifically or questions or how we did, good or bad. And I know probably I should be, maybe other people, other staff members know the answers to these questions better than you, but if you have any feedback of things that hit your radar, certainly would like to hear about it.
Do we have any brownfields?
Just about every place does.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, well, we did an assessment at 600 Spear Street this past year. So, and sometimes it's just an assessment, because there may have been a use that might have done something back in time, and the property owner is just verifying that it doesn't have any issues that need to be cleaned up. But lots of times there are things that need to be cleaned up. So,
is that just south of the cow barns at UVM? Is that where the solar field is now?
It might be. Yep.
That was Von Turkovich's project.
I think that sounds right.
Okay. Yeah. You know where that is? It's. Yeah.
But, over the years, we've certainly have done brownfield assessments, on Williston Road and Shelburne Road on the particular.
Were you part of the brownfield assessment on Pine Street?
Pine Street is in Burlington?
Yeah. Yeah. That torpedoed that whole project that was going to happen. I mean, not that's not South Burlington. I was just curious.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that Superfund site predates a lot of us.
Okay, good. It's more than brown. It's it's super fun brown field. Yeah, but we did do some work on that site, that adjacent site that was at 453 Pine. I can't remember the exact address.
And, you know, we spent a lot of brownfield money also down in the Burlington waterfront as they were doing, you know, the repurposing of properties down there and the cleanup down there. So, but anyway, but any other feedback, and I'll just take silence as okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
I just had a quick comment on the city center modeling. I'm not sure what the organization's role was, but I know there's been some challenges with school traffic at two periods of the day typically, and turning buses of radiuses on sort of the urban design streets. But, you know, the school and city are working in partnership to kind of come to some resolutions and remedy that over time. But that has been a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I am not familiar enough with the details of this to know if that was part of this work, or maybe you know, Jesse.
Yeah, so CCRPC often will come in as a full or partial funder for our work with other consultants. So in this particular case, that was the case, was as a pass-through to VHB to help us do some of that work. I think the challenge for our community is what the traffic counts and the engineering say from an engineering policy perspective, and what the actual experience is on the road during very finite periods of time. There's not a big Venn diagram of those two things. But so the financial support, getting access to the consultants on the quick consultant list is very helpful to us.
Thank you.
What is a Section 248 application? What role did CCRPC play in that review for Beta's solar panels on the roof?
So for every we get notified, we're a statutory party as the Regional Planning Commission to every Act 250 and every Section 248 permit or application, I guess I should technically say. And for those of you not familiar, Section 248 is what goes to the Public Utilities Commission.
For an Act 250?
No.
No.
For
any application.
For approval from the Public Utilities Commission.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it's typically the things, you know, energy.
Right.
Those are mostly, we've been seeing solar projects. So our executive committee actually reviews those, and really we're doing, you may remember a number of years ago, we did an enhanced energy plan, particularly for siting of renewable energy projects, but also to stay out of environmentally sensitive areas. And so a lot of our comments are about avoiding those natural resource areas. But things that are on a rooftop, we're usually like, thank you, that's a good place for solar. So we, you know, and we provide that comment letter, whether we have a comment of something to be avoided or whether we're just like, yeah, that is consistent with our policy and our plan.
But you don't do it for residential, do you?
We would do it if an Act 250 came through with the residential development. Sure, we definitely have.
So it's spawned off by an Act 250 process.
Yeah, for the Act 250 ones, we have typically just only been commenting on major Act 250 applications. I'm trying to remember if O'Brien, you know, the O'Brien project probably went through at some point in the last few years, and I can't remember if there was a more recent one. But yeah, any other questions on what we did?
Yeah, on the behavior of the public transportation planning, coordination with Green Mountain Transit. I wonder if you could drill down a little bit more on that, since it's going through a major change.
I think Clayton was due to speak with us last month, but he'll be coming in next week and speaking with us as a board. But if you have any further detail on what he...
Is your mic on, Chris?
I just turned it on.
Okay.
Maybe I'm whispering, sorry. But he'll be in front of us next week on Tuesday.
Yeah, and you can see, if you're looking on what says page 4, at the bottom of the regional activity list, last fiscal year, we provided like about $440,000 for transit planning to GMT. So that was money we just passed through our organization to GMT for transit planning. This fiscal year, it's actually up over $600,000. So we kind of significantly increased our investment in GMT to help them get through this period in particular. But I wouldn't be surprised if that level of investment is sustained at this point. At $600,000. So, sorry, Councilor, if you're asking, you know, we're not trying to, you know, replicate or duplicate the transit planning. We're just funding them to support the transit planning that they're doing.
Thank you. And in a broader question, I've heard talk about a study to have greater coordination between cities in a more of a county construct. There's some study or plan underway. Are you, I would assume you are a part of that, and if so, could you elaborate on it? I always hear about it, but no great details.
If you go to the legislature's website and look at the committees on the far right side, sorry, I only know this because I did this like 3 days ago, or last week.
I can send around the link.
Yeah, there's a link to this regional and county governance study that the legislature has. I am not directly involved in it, but one of my peers is sitting on, there's a kind of a policy committee that Senator Hardy's running, and then there's a technical advisory group that Michael Gahn from the Bond Bank is leading. So, yeah, we're certainly engaged. There's certainly a lot of issues over time, some of which we've talked about here before, regional dispatch and things like that.
And Eric Wells is the manager appointee to that, the manager in Williston.
Thanks.
And, yeah. Can I make two other points about?
Please.
I don't know if this is fast forwarding, Charlie, for you, but, I do also want to call out from a big picture perspective how CCRPC plays a really critical role with us is many state designations, many federal grants, many state grants require alignment between what we're trying to do and the regional plan. And Charlie and his team are very effective at not only guiding us in how we can apply and leverage those funds, but then connecting the dots for the funders between what we're trying to do regionally or what we're trying to do locally and the regional plan. So, Alana often works on letters of support with Charlie's team, works with other funding opportunities. So while the dollars leveraged in that Charlie is saying are his dollars, I think there's actually categories higher than that he has helped us leverage from federal or state grants. And then, Michael, to your point, I think the thing that doesn't necessarily show up in this report, and I hope I'm not telling tales to your board chair, is that Charlie does a huge amount of work with the managers around conversations that don't naturally fall anywhere else. So when we're talking about regional dispatch, when we're talking about community outreach, when we're talking about GMT, when we're talking about the unhoused population, Charlie is often the convener of professionals across jurisdictions to help have some of those difficult conversations. So super helpful to the manager community.
Yeah.
And I do have to add that, we recognize that in Charlie, and it's been a wonderful experience with his tenure from what the Regional Planning Commission was before, and more of a fractured unit between the Metropolitan Planning Organization and the Regional Planning Commissions that were merged during his time. So we're an honest broker, and I think that's what we want to be, and he's branded as well, both in Montpelier and with the communities we serve here in Chittenden County.
I feel like I'm
Your
attending my
traffic alert
funeral.
program, how is your traffic alert program, how does that work?
Traffic counting?
Alert program.
Oh, traffic alert. We really gather up all the construction projects that are going on, from V-Trans and from each of the municipalities, and have a person that sends that out once a week to kind of say, hey, heads up, like this road's under construction, that works.
Right.
So it's something you can sign up for on our website.
Okay, so, but where is that sent to the different towns and cities?
No, it's more retail.
Oh.
It's like you can sign up and get it directly to your email.
Okay.
Yep.
But it's a forward-looking schedule
Yeah,
of changes.
it's
It's
like,
not
yeah.
like this road is closed.
Yeah, it's not what you're
Yeah,
getting
it's
on
a
the morning
planning thing.
news.
Right,
It's
right.
more,
Yeah.
hey, this construction project's happening next week.
I see.
type of
Future
thing.
traffic alert program, yeah. Here.
Yeah.
How's that advertised?
On our website? That's a good question. I don't know that we've done a lot of marketing of that as of late. Probably in our newsletter also.
It'd be great if there was a way through our front port forums or something to get that out to the public so they know that service is there.
Yeah.
So, for example, Williston closed Industrial Avenue one day about 3 weeks ago, and they put a couple of, advertising LED boards at either end. But a lot of people I talked to didn't even know. So I was pushing it out through, my personal, means of communication.
Right.
And people that I know, I was like texting them. And then at work, there's a department chat, right? So I said, please, and a lot of people are remote, but it's just like, if you're traveling, do not try to go down this road. It's going to be complete chaos, right? And they've had water main breaks on that road too before that have tied things up badly. So, but there's no centralized way to get that information out to people. And like Williston, I mean, they tweet, but they didn't tweet that, right? You know, and there are other organizations that people that should be tweeting that, you know, immediately when something like that happens, right? To tell all drivers, but you know, anyway.
Yeah, so anyway, that is one little service. Thanks for picking up on that. So I'm going to skip over the rest of the report because it feels like you've already scanned enough of that, and kind of skip to more topic of the day. So Act 181 implementation, which is that Act 250 bill the legislature passed this spring. There's a 2-page summary, I think, after the report. This is not a summary of the bill. This is just a summary of the issues as vis-a-vis the RPC and our relationship with our municipalities. So we tried to boil it down, but we are required by that new law to engage in a process to kind of do our regional plan in a little bit different way. They've now dictated 10 land use categories that all the RPCs need to use across the state. So they're trying to get a consistent mapping process to happen, and then use those maps for two very specific things. One is for the areas that could have partial Act 250 exemption, what they've been referring to as Tier 1B, if you were following a lot of that conversation, and also to have our maps be used for the state designation program. So the designation program is something that evolved over 25 years with 5 different designations. And you had to kind of negotiate the map, as you guys did with Newtown Center, for your city center here. And rather than negotiating with the state, we'll now negotiate it locally, regionally here. So it's part of our map, and then the state will just use our maps. So those are two kind of big policy changes, you know, a slight change in certainly how our maps are used, and maybe a little bit in our relationship with the city. But my hope is that we can kind of update some of those mapped areas, maybe expand them, or whatever, change them however the city thinks appropriate. But we are on a path to trying to update those maps over the next 9 months or so. With 2 other important pieces of that work, we have to do meaningful participation with a focus on underrepresented communities, and look at environmental benefits and burdens to marginalized communities. So that's a chunk of work that's part of that. And then the second part is housing targets. So sometime in the next, I hesitate to guess exactly, it was somewhere in the 2 to 4 months from now, the state has to produce a statewide housing target and regional housing targets, and then we're required to work with our municipalities to have municipal housing targets. Actually, that last step is not really something that's new in statute. There's been language in there for 30 years about us having to do that. It's been a challenging piece to do without some more support from the state. So now it's a little bit more of a top-down process. The legislature is very interested in tracking what is happening with housing. And I'm not sure target is really the right word. I think maybe it's more of a goal. I don't think there's anything really punitive lined up around those housing targets yet. But my sense of the legislative conversation is like they really just need data. And to be honest with you, the state does not know how many housing units get built where in this state. And I'm just going to say that as a straight up fact.
Wow.
They don't know where housing actually is getting built unless it goes through, they know what goes through Act 250, but only about 20% of the housing units go through Act 250. And we know in Chittenden County, because we've set up, we've been working for 10 or more years to get that information out of the municipalities, because you see everything that happens within your city. So, we work with your staff now to get that out every year. But, I think us and one other region have that level of detail. So the state is now going to, the legislature, I think, is putting quite a bit of pressure on the administration to actually get to that level of detail statewide. So they actually know what's getting built where. so they can maybe make some data-informed policy decisions going forward. Sorry, that was a little tangent on the housing targets. Yes.
The word target, or you mean to say track the building of houses? Because target sort of implies, as you said, setting out a goal, and are we getting to that goal? And then the question is, who sets it at the municipal, regional, or state level?
Yeah, and my sense has been that the legislators are really looking for the data to be tracked, but against the target, to then determine if they need to do any policy changes at the state level. And frankly, I mean, I think that would apply at the regional level and at the municipal level, right?
So against the targets set by the state and for the regions and for the municipalities, or I guess who's setting the targets would be my
The
question.
state is setting the state and regional targets. We are working with our municipalities to set the municipal targets. That's right, yeah, right, they all nest, yeah. The last page of this extra attachment is just kind of lays out the 6 phases of work that we're going through. The internal work has started a couple months ago. We're in phase 2 right now and trying to make sure the city councils and select boards are aware of this process that's going to be going on. Phase 3, we'll figure out how to do environmental benefits and burdens. Phase 4, we'll do some engagement on the future land use map of the draft. And this is also a good point for me to ask if there are any groups within the city that you want to make sure we communicate with beyond your planning commission, which we certainly will do. But you can either throw out some names now or as we're going through that process, or I'm sure we'll be working with Paul a ton. If there's groups that you want to make sure we communicate with during this, please let us know. And then we'll layer in phase 5 the housing targets, make sure those houses can land in those geographies. And then phase 6, we'll finalize the maps and targets. A couple points about finalizing it. One is we are going to need a vote from the city council about whether you want the Act 250 partial exemption. So in this tier 1B, the legislature is requiring that we get some affirmative action from each of our municipalities that you want that. And I think that's more a concern in rural towns where maybe they want Act 250 regulation to stay in place, even if they have zoning and subdivision. And then it goes, right now a regional plan gets approved by the Regional Planning Commission, and that's the end of the process. This new law not only has the vote by you that you want this partial exemption, but then it goes to a land use review board, which is taking their place of the Natural Resources Board. And they have final approval on both our regional plan and this map for the exemptions and designations. And within that, there is an objection process. So they don't have an appeal of that. You can't appeal the land use review board. But if any individual has an objection, you have to have let us know during our public hearing process, and then let the land use review board know that you have an objection, and the land use review board can resolve it at their level. So it's a new process. We will see how it goes, but it is more process than we've had to date.
Does this mean you'll be using our sewer and water maps that we just are getting ready that we've actually passed, I think, at this point?
I expect so.
Okay.
Yeah, and we certainly historically have been trying to do that, even if they weren't, formalized in the municipalities. But we've been looking at certainly where infrastructure is. There's criteria around complete streets, and certainly your zoning and your LDRs. So there's a lot, and this is really my way of saying heads up. The other thing I've been trying to say, we have a very good working relationship with the city. And all your staff. But, I don't know, we may come up to a situation where there's some disagreement on the map, and I just, commitment for me, like we're still a partner. Let's just kind of have goodwill and work through it. Hopefully we don't have any issues, but if we do, remember everybody's well-intentioned, and we'll try to work through it. So I'll leave it at that.
Could I ask you, question? Tier 1B, you said if you're following that conversation, does that mean that Tier 1B has not been fully defined, who would fall into that, or?
These maps will define that. Yeah, so that's a process that we will go through with you, or with the city.
So just two more quick questions. So what's the thing that you're most proud of that happened last year, accomplishment in the CCRPC?
Holy cow.
Because you have a lot of fine people doing a lot of fine work. I just thought,
I think that we were able to help the legislature actually get an Act 250 bill passed. Maybe it was one little significant thing that's not even on this list. That is one thing. There's a lot of other smaller things. I don't know, Chris, maybe you have an answer.
I would have to say, and I tried to email you and discuss this, but we're taking a look at the bylaws to try and fit in your next topic, the Equity Action Committee. When we were here last year, we explained to you how focused we were on, working that into the program, and you hear it represented in the discussion just now about meaningful participation with underrepresented communities. But in addition to that, with the generation of people who are in their 30s and the professionals that they have at CCRPC, we looked at the benefits package and family and medical leave, and that was something that was really important to the 30, 34-year-olds, 35-year-olds. And we're able to implement that, I think, and implement it successfully, taking a lead again from the legislature with their effort in family and medical leave and insurance, I believe, that they provided from Montpelier as well. So these things are important to the folks that make CCRPC what CCRPC is, the same way in the city that it's the staff and the employees that make the city of South Burlington what it is, and you guys have to deal with that in your negotiations. But, this is a 22-person operation that is extremely valuable for all the communities in Chittenden County, and the level of professionalism that goes along with that and the caring that goes in with the benefits, I think really is needed here as we come out of the COVID pandemic and approach work with a new perspective for what we do every day. So I'm real proud of that. And Charlie may not speak to it much.
It's just internal stuff.
The other question was, what's the one thing that frustrated you the most last year? That external forces just ground some project to a halt that you couldn't control? And
I actually don't dwell on things like that. And partly because, sorry, I've been doing this a long time. It's either time for that topic or it's not. Like Act 250, I think I could see the issues with that in probably my first year that I got here, but there wasn't readiness to address it until this past year, right? And I think the same is true with some of these other things, whether we're talking about benefits or the equity work. If I could spend one more minute and just plant a seed with you. Jesse kind of mentioned conversations amongst managers with the core towns, so your neighbors specifically. We've been having some conversation about maybe we could help advance some of the equity work in the municipalities with a resource in our staff that was available to multiple towns. So there's, I don't know, did they get this one pager, Jesse? Okay, there's a draft one pager talking about this idea of an equity policy advisor that would be available to the municipalities to help kind of dig in a little bit more deeply. And this is kind of a response to nobody really has the resources to have a full-time position, and yet we don't want to ignore this issue in totality. And so maybe we can piecemeal together with multiple towns working together or investing together. So sorry, this is planting a seed for your budget conversations, I think. And we were kind of talking about around about a $25,000 per town buy into that. And at Winooski, they were definitely interested in this, and like, what if there's 8 towns, or what if there's 4? And I was like, well, we will size it depending on where there is the actual interest and commitment. So,
and our hope is that there would be some economies of scale with this. So a consultant or a staff person or a consultant we might hire to do an equity analysis of a policy we're considering, that's learning that somebody who's doing a similar thing in Winooski might already have skill sets in. Somebody who's doing a similar thing in Williston may already have skill sets in. So instead of recreating that skill set all the time, achieve some economies of scale, having a centralized person that we all could call on.
yeah. And I hired an equity and engagement manager about 2 years ago now. And so I think some of the thought was like, she's fully booked. So this isn't about taking up some of her time, but I think also maybe having a second person, like where she could help backfill or the other person can backfill. So anyway, just trying to build a little bit more of a supportive system to address these issues.
And by the way, I might add that all his staff is fully booked, including the executive director himself on his third meeting tonight. Congratulations.
That's fine. Yeah. But thank you for this much time, and I appreciate it. And thanks for the feedback and questions.
You're welcome, and thanks for coming tonight.
Yeah, appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Charlie. Thanks, Chris.
All right, have a good night.
You want to take a break?
Yeah. Take a quick break.
5 minutes?
Oh,
All right.
I wore
We'll
you
be
out.
back in 5 minutes. are back. And so we finished. Yeah, okay. Well, we'll wait for Mike. We're going to come down to number 10. Playing hopscotch with the agenda items tonight. But we're making pretty good time. We're actually one item ahead, I think, at this point. Where's Mike? Well, we don't need Mike. If he, yeah, I just open the bathroom and scream.
We got a quorum here.
He's not too far away. He can't be that far away.
Well, this place is emptied out quickly.
Yeah, really.
New joiners online, though.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. But he should have been back by, maybe he got in a conversation and then he had to go into one of the rooms, yeah. All right, well, we're going to start with that. Okay. So we're going to go to item 10, which is discussion and possible action, continued review and discussion of land development regulation amendments LDR 24-01 to LDR 24-10 as recommended by the Planning Commission and related to requirements of Acts 47 and 18 and city goals on housing, climate change, and transportation. Possible action to adopt the amendments warned for public hearing on August 22nd of this year and to amend and warn for a second public hearing from November 4th, 2024 at 7 p.m. And Paul Connor's here from Planning and Zoning. Good evening.
Hi, folks.
Again.
Paul Connor, Director of Planning and Zoning. So you have in your memo a couple of different options for you. You held your public hearing at a meeting last month, and so if you choose, you could adopt the regulations as warned for the public hearing. Also, as you know, you had a discussion following the public hearing. You heard some options from Chair Jessica Luisos on addressing some of the subject areas that you had raised around reserving land for future development or future use in a master plan, and being clear about land being designated as permanent open space and how that's treated. And so you have some options in there. We have, as you see in the memo, if you choose to go in that direction, staff had a little bit more time to chew on that and really cross the i's and dot the t's on that. So it's very strong language, so it's a little bit adjusted from what you saw. If you chose to go in that direction or make any other changes, then you determine what those are and then warn a public hearing on a fresh public hearing on the updated draft, including those changes. So this is really your discussion. We did our best to answer the various questions that you posed either at the last meeting or subsequently by email, but we're here to answer anything else that you got. And then otherwise it's your discussion.
So there were three options. We could adopt the amendments tonight.
Sorry, Paul.
There are four.
Thank you,
options.
Jesse.
One is to enjoy snacks briefly, then choose the other three options.
I hope we choose one or two.
We're all going to talk with our mouths full, but not quite yet.
They had a 5:30 BCA meeting on election.
Yeah.
So I felt the need to give them sustenance.
Straw poll with the council. Did somebody have an opinion about option 2 at this point? Is there something in the LDR proposed changes?
Well, I would like to adopt the changes sent to us by the Planning Commission that are included in the packet, beginning at page 7 in this memo.
Can I make a comment, Tim?
Please.
I kind of went to LDR 101 school, and my impression is that I would support option 1, and the rationale for that is really that in that initial presentation that was made to council, that came with at the time a unanimous vote of the Planning Commission. It addresses the 2 acre versus 4 with the current regulation. It removed the 2-lot subdivision. And I had a note to myself, something greater than 1 phase that I can ask Paul to describe. But one of the things that I took away from some of my conversations was that when there are changes in, or amendments like this to the LDRs, there's sort of a 90% correct, and no one really knows what the outcome will be, sort of what the 10% that's incorrect or might need to be modified is until it gets tested kind of in real life. So I really looked at the nuances of looking at the options, or the question that came up in the subsequent rounds of asking the Planning Commission to look at options, and understanding that those weren't necessarily recommended by the Planning Commission, but considered and presented at council's request. So I felt like, particularly since there are things that haven't shown up before, like a bubble diagram, things like that would be new to the LDRs anyway. I thought if the first option was, gets us 90% there, then, you know, I think supporting the option 1 with a motion and then understanding where the course correction might come down the road, and the Planning Commission kind of move on with what I understand are a lot of other priorities that are in front of them, or will be in front of them. That's where my thinking is.
Thank you. So Andrew, you agree with option 1 then?
No?
No. Okay.
I would agree with option 1. I think it's worth testing the waters to see, since there was a view already in place, as was just said. So I think that's the best way to do it. I spoke also to with planning on a planning commission member. They confirmed that yes, you know, what was just said by Elizabeth, that you know, you really don't know how things are going to play out until they're tested, and that there was an agreement. There was a majority agreement at that time. So it seems like, why don't we just see how it works, since the goal was, you know, clearly stated to maximize the ability to develop. In general, I think this whole process is fantastic. I really commend the work of the Planning Commission. I think it's aimed at, along with what we're doing with upgrading our permitting and financial system, is to make everything clearer, simpler, more transparent, more easy to develop in the areas where it is developed, make everything clearer. So I would say I would support option 1 as well.
Lori?
I have a question for Paul. These areas that we requested the Planning Commission to look at again and come back with some recommendations. Are they happy with these recommendations and these changes? Or was the Planning Commission preference to keep it the way it was?
So I guess the best way that I can answer that, Lori, is to say that they took the request from council seriously, which was to present them 1 or more additional options. They stayed out of the question of whether one is better than the other, because the request to them was, please show us an option that would do the following. They did not get into a discussion, so I can't really speak to how they felt about one versus the other. I think that they feel that both can work.
Okay.
But they tried to adhere to the request and not make a recommendation because they weren't asked for a recommendation.
Okay, my second question is, my understanding is if we go with option 2, that will not put any more work on the Planning Commission, though it will put more work on you because you'll have to come to another warned hearing. Is that correct?
There's a likelihood I will be at whichever meeting it is warned regardless.
That's
But
right.
yes,
So-
the Planning Commission work, there's some administrative task where anytime you make a change, they have to assess the change for the, how it might change their report, but that on the scale of work, that's a fairly small task.
So if we
this is-
adopt any of these changes, they won't add significant work to the planning commission's workload.
I mean, if you are taking the action of one or the other of these options, then that's your workload, not theirs.
Right, okay, thank you.
Can I make a, Paul, is this correct? I think that's true, except that if you adopt changes and have another public hearing and then decide to adopt additional changes, the longer we stretch out the multiple sets of codes working at once, it does add staff time to staff to review applications under multiple sets of rules.
Right, so I'd say that over time, where the impact really is felt is on the development review side, not the planning commission side. So the development review board is currently navigating both the existing adopted regulations, the draft regulations, and where Act 47 and Act 181 overwrite both of those, or overwrite the older ones. So the longer that period is in place, the more our development review staff is helping people to navigate amongst three.
There is somebody's hand up. Jack Hansen?
Yep.
Jack, are you online? Can you unmute and turn your camera on?
Yes. Are we allowed as members of the public to give input on this, or?
You can comment now if you'd like, please.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to comment. So my name is Jack Hansen. I am a Burlington resident. I served on the Burlington City Council, including on the Ordinance Committee and the Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee. I also previously worked at an organization called Sustainable Transportation Vermont, and I now run a climate nonprofit called Run on Climate. So I have a lot of experience in this area, and I commend the work you all have done and the progress you're making and the direction you're moving on these issues. One item I wanted to speak on within this is around, I think it was a proposal from Councilor Chalnick around decoupling the cost of parking from the cost of housing in new development. This is a step we took in Burlington that I feel was very important. The concept is that if someone isn't going to use a parking space, they shouldn't be forced to pay for it or to subsidize someone else's parking. You all took the step of eliminating minimum parking requirements even before we did in Burlington. And when we followed your lead on that, we made some other changes, including this one. I think a point was raised that it would be difficult to enforce. However, we've not found that in Burlington. The thing that makes it easy to enforce this policy is that, landlords or property owners or developers, when they're trying to market these units, they're going to market, the amenities and the costs associated. So it's very easy to determine whether the parking space is included and bundled into the rent or whether it's charged separately. You don't have to do additional work beyond, taking a look at the marketing and advertising for those units. And it has a very powerful effect where folks can actually see a real financial benefit from, going car free and from moving in to South Burlington into these new developments without a car, knowing that they'll pay a lower monthly cost of living. So I think it's a powerful tool and a powerful incentive. And really it's just eliminating an incentive in the other direction. It's actually not even a positive incentive for sustainable transportation. It's just simply leveling the playing field and saying, if you're gonna have a dedicated parking space, you'll pay for that space. And if you're not, you don't have to pay for someone else's space. So I hope you guys will take that one seriously and consider moving forward with that. But overall, just want to thank you all for your great work on these issues.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Okay, so I didn't understand what you're saying. You said that past page 7, right? Well, there's number 7, the council, there's a...
The memo to us is numbered.
Memo page 7 is where the red line
on
starts.
the bottom there.
Where the red line starts?
Yeah.
But that one says warned for public hearing on 8/22, so that would be included in option 1, right?
No,
This
I
section?
mean, well, so just
So
These changes were not, right, part of what we warned. These are the changes
right,
that.
so these are changes to the draft warned on 8/22.
Okay.
So the red lines are the new,
That's the stuff, that's
the
option
new
two.
stuff that we asked
Oh, okay.
for consideration on.
Okay. Well, that was confusing to me.
Right, and just to maybe speak to why I think these are important, right? The kind of example that the Planning Commission was throwing out was, suppose someone owns a 30-acre parcel, and they'd like to develop 7, and of the remaining 23, their intent is to conserve, or at the very least not develop today. Without these changes, they would nonetheless be required to, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, have a kind of full master plan for all 30 acres. And what these changes allow them to do, among other things, right? There's actually a lot of other important changes, I think, in this being on page 7. But the key for me is it allows them to have a master plan for the 7 and reserve the 23. And doing some minimal stuff to show that the way they're developing the 7 doesn't kind of impact the ability to develop the 23, but kind of a much less effort on their part to show that than a full master plan would require. I think there's other changes in here that are important that it was unclear to me, and I think probably to the Planning Commission, whether within that context, if you had actually conserved the 23, whether that was satisfactory for the master plan or whether you nonetheless had to show how you could develop it. And this clarifies that actually conserving it is something you're permitted to do, which I don't think is clear today. And then these changes also clarify the 2-acre carve-out. There was some discontinuity. If it was like over 4 acres, you can have a 2-acre carve-out, but between 2 and 4, you couldn't. And I think, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, this kind of addresses that discontinuity and makes it more equitable for folks. So for all those reasons, I think these changes are actually very thoughtful. I know the Planning Commission had a couple of fulsome meetings where they've discussed, and our Planning and Zoning Department spent a lot of time refining the changes and ensuring that they worked well. So for all those reasons, I think it's important and appropriate to adopt.
Okay. So, straw vote, I support option 2, right? Elizabeth, I think you heard, I think you said only support option 1 at this time? Option 1. Mike, option 1 only? Lori, option 2? So, I mean, the easiest thing to do is I could ask for a motion to support option 2 and it would pass. I think if it done the other way, it would probably fail because we want to pass option 2. Is the council okay with that? Yeah. Okay, can we convince you at all to support option 2 while we're here?
I would just add, I've asked the questions, part of the questions that you've brought up, Andrew, and my understanding is there's not that many parcels of that magnitude in the city for development anyway, and that in many cases, owners would have gone through the engineering studies regardless. So this notion of sort of a partial bubble diagram, again, which has not tested waters at all, it would be new. So that's why I think the Planning Commission got it right with option 1, 90% there, and then there's an opportunity to move on and sort of test the waters with real, IRL, as they say.
Okay. Well, then I'll entertain a motion to adopt, what?
Paul, do you want to just offer the motion that would, because there's some blanks in this
Oh, yeah.
language?
We don't like
just so
blanks.
we're sure what you're warning.
I think the blanks would be as presented in this evening's packet.
Oh, okay.
And then I have one thing to add to that when you get to the motion.
After we say the motion, or?
Sure.
Okay.
So, you want to make the
Yeah,
motion?
no, you make the motion.
Okay. So I move to hold a public hearing on amendments to the LDRs, LDR 24-01 through LDR 2410, to include the changes to the draft as presented in the memo in our packet tonight, and to hold a public hearing on Monday, November 4th, 2024 at 7 p.m.
I'll second.
One item to add, if you are okay, it was identified to staff this morning that on page 332, we list dimensional standards and we say maximum stories as the column header, and then it lists the feet. So we accidentally say 28 stories when we mean 28 feet. So if you are comfortable,
This goes.
I've been
advocating for
I've been talking about high rises for a long time.
just
But you
go
know what?
straight for it. So
Boom.
on the far right column of page
We will beat Burlington and what they built in the pit then, right?
332, that it be max feet increase, not max stories increase.
Wow.
So that would be my request for a friendly amendment.
Included.
We have a motion.
Seconded.
We have a second. Is there any other discussion?
Tim, what would be the right opportunity to discuss some of the other items that are in this memo tonight?
Maybe not tonight?
Oh, thank you.
Because
Well-
we have,
Time is it?
the agenda item is for possible action on these options 1 and 2.
Sorry, so we have a memo from Planning and Zoning that's answered a bunch of questions that we had on these LDRs. And I would think it's potentially appropriate to discuss some of those answers.
How does the rest of the council feel at 9 o'clock?
We're a little bit ahead of time,
Okay.
so I do, if there's another time that we're going to come back to it, I would be open to that, but I think we would be remiss to have asked for the information and to not review it.
And
I guess
Paul has
I would
his hand
say if council might be making adjustments to this round of amendments related to this, then tonight is the time to have that conversation before you warn another public hearing, because if you choose to make changes, that's another public hearing. So I'd say if there's changes that you want to make to LDR 2401 through 10, I would strongly invite you to have that tonight.
so do you not want to have the vote before we have the discussion?
If you have the vote,
would
then that's the draft
Like
that
to
you're
have the discussion,
holding the hearing.
yeah.
Before the vote?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I think there are a number of things in here that we can park, because as I understand it, they're important, but they're not related to what we're going to be warning. So, for instance, the 100-foot thing, and I think Jack made a really good point, and I would like to have a future discussion about separating out rent. But the thing that I wanted to just really honestly take the temperature of my fellow councilors tonight before we warn this for a second public hearing is the information that Planning, Zoning, and Paul provided in question 3 at the bottom of page 3, which is that in the low scale neighborhoods with these changes, there's potential, theoretical, for 58 units per acre. And that strikes me as quite high. And I really am interested in what my fellow councils think. If there's not appetite to examine and change that, I would go with it, but it does strike me as remarkably dense for a low-scale neighborhood.
Which map is, both of the maps, 2 and 3?
Yeah,
The orange areas could be up to
58 units per
58
acre
units per acre.
in theoretical density.
It's theoretical, but how realistic is it for the land that is there?
Yeah, the one of the things that occurred to me going through these is really the nature of changing neighborhoods, and that, again, without, relying on the sort of, when this is tested, the Planning Commission and design review can sort of see what's actually coming in, should a owner or builder or developer choose to focus on that. But I do worry that that neighborhood feel that really makes South Burlington livable and desirable could turn into something really different because of that potential level. And again, I don't know how realistic this is, but I don't know if the Planning Commission had any dialogue about that or not.
I'm happy to jump in, but you're having a discussion, so.
No, go ahead.
So a lot of this is driven by the statutes. So under Act 181, wherever a single unit building is allowed, a fourplex is allowed. And under Act 47, anything that meets the definition of a affordable housing development is automatically granted a 40% density bonus over whatever else. So those already nest regardless of any other choices that the community makes. So currently, our regulations allow in, say, the R4 districts, a single unit building on typically 9,000 square feet. So that could be a fourplex, and that gets a 40% bonus just based on our current regulations. So the question was really, what should the minimum lot size be? Right now it's at 9,000. The Planning Commission looked through this and felt that it would be an opportune time to right-size that to the historical of the city. I'm going to go a little bit nerdy here, and I apologize. Our current regulations say that any lot in existence in the R4 district prior to February 28th, 1974 is granted a completely different set of standards in terms of the lot sizes and the setbacks and the coverages that they get. They can be smaller with lesser setbacks and more lot coverage. So sometime, presumably February 28th, 1974, the city actually expanded its lot sizes over what used to be the case. The Planning Commission felt like this was an opportunity to not have two different sets of rules that essentially work within neighborhoods just based on when the lot happened to have been subdivided. They also looked through and saw, what are the opportunities? How often will it come up that a lot can in fact be subdivided? So whereas we have a lot of 9,000 square foot lots, that likely means that the 5,000 square foot lot size, you can't double that. That's 10,000. So they mapped this, and this was in one of the spotlights of where the incidences of where lot sizes are double or more this 5,000 number, and they felt like they had come up with a pretty good in between where they were bringing a lot of older non-conforming lots into conformance, and they were allowing for some level of division of lots, but not wholesale in a lot of districts. The last thing I'll say is that this 40% bonus that does exist under the statutes that could theoretically bring it down to 3,000, that's really a theoretical number. Because to put a fourplex on 3,000 square feet in the market demands and meet the setbacks is basically not really achievable. Burlington's approach to this same problem was they eliminated minimum lot sizes altogether. So they don't have a number that sort of implies. They just say lots can have up to a fourplex on it. The Planning Commission felt like keeping a number represented something of what the pattern of our neighborhoods are, but they did consider that approach of just not having a number altogether because I think they were understanding that if one is doing the maximum building of a fourplex on the smallest lot, that is not necessarily something that is going to be achieved. And they were comfortable that they're meeting the statutes and that maybe there's a rare circumstance where it could happen, but if it can't, then that's okay too, because it might just be appropriate for a single unit building then.
And
So that was their analysis of this.
I'd like to just jump in on that for a second because I was on the Planning Commission during that discussion. And we spent a lot of time looking at lot sizes, looking at non-conforming lots, looking at where the balance point is between getting rid of non-conforming lots, simplifying the LDR getting rid of the two buckets, and the conversation about being mindful of neighborhoods and the neighborhood character was part of that conversation. And while this new LDR theoretically would allow this incredibly dense development in some areas, the likelihood of those changes happening in the existing neighborhoods in any foreseeable future is very low. And it felt like it was a way to, there was a lot of tussle over where to come down to meet all these conflicting issues. And so having been part of that discussion, I can say it was a very considered discussion, and I support it.
Not whether I support it or against it, I just wanted to understand a little bit more this term, having no lot size. I'm just curious. I thought the whole purpose of lot size was to sort of control sort of voting. What does that mean, and why was it so easy to, and what have been the implications in Burlington for discarding lot size, let's say?
Well, using a corollary in our own community, there is no minimum lot size in city center. So what dictates what can get placed on the lot is the maximum height of the building, the setback from the rear. There are still lots, but the definition of the lot then determines how far back from the side and the rear and how much of it in total can be covered. It's new in Burlington, so I can't say that, here's all the implications of it, but I think that they looked at all the different tools that apply, and many of them overlap. And so they still have a minimum setback, they still have a maximum height of a building, they still say that, I think in their case, they put a maximum square footage of the principal structure. So if you have a 6-acre lot, you can't put a 5-acre sized home on it. To use an extreme example. So they come at it in different ways. And I think in this round of amendments, that subject area gets diminished in its importance. Rather than being a determining factor, it's a contributing factor. And in the same round of amendments, in the higher density districts like Shelburne Road, these amendments propose to not have a minimum lot size, having learned from City Center that in the large scale buildings that it doesn't really dictate land form.
Okay. With that explanation, I would also support keeping it as is, because I thought it sounds like it was a very thoughtful process to try to find the happy medium. Also, I just wanted, for the record, Lori said this at the last meeting, and I saw that Jessica jotted this down, that he would support higher levels of buildings in the city center, and I would also support that, because I think that is something we just need to confront. So if you can ask Jessica to add that to her little notepad she took down last time.
Absolutely, that is the current active biggest project of the Planning Commission from your work plan. So.
Other issues, Andrew?
So I think it would be good, as suggested in this memo, for future examination for the Planning Commission to look at this lot coverage ratio for larger lots, the TDM point, and possible tweaking of this 100-foot distance between homes and NRP. And I would, do other folks agree?
I think we heard tonight, too, that the Planning Commission would be asked by the CCRPC, I'm going to get the acronym wrong, to provide feedback on the Act 181. So, and that seemed like it was a 2 to 4 month time frame. So I think looking at
We've got it on the calendar.
Workload or whatever that needs to be incorporated.
Andrew, you're talking about the issue that the neighbor brought up.
Yeah.
About the 100-foot and how the houses get set up.
Yeah.
Is that setback you're referring to?
No, so remember we had.
Yeah, the one, oh, yeah, okay, you're talking about how
someone-
you measure, yeah.
Yeah.
So, can I clarify what you're asking? Are you asking to just have this on kind of next year's work plan for the planning commission? Or are you asking the council to have the planning commission prioritize this over form-based code review in city center and 181 and whatnot?
The former.
So just keep it on the work
Yeah.
list, long-term work list.
Yeah.
I thought you were suggesting we deal with it now.
Oh,
I
no,
like-
no, I don't see how we can deal with it now.
I like having it on a future agenda
Yeah,
for
yeah,
the
yeah,
planning
yeah.
commission, yes.
Yeah, as suggested by staff in the memo.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Anything else? No? Are you ready for the vote?
All those in favor?
Say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? So Mr. Scanlon and Ms. Fitzgerald voted nay. The other three voted aye.
Okay, so you will have a second public hearing on November 4th. We'll go from there. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Moving on to item 11, which is discussion and possible action to consider resolution number 2024-22 requesting that the Vermont congressional delegation request replacing the F-35 mission. This is placed on agenda by council request. So I hope we don't have to spend too much time discussing this, but I want to give everybody a chance to chime in. And we have minimal attendance here, online and in the auditorium. So I'll just give you a little bit of background from my perspective. So my history on the council starting in 2016 when I joined right away, the F-35 issue was burning pretty hot, and there was a request for us to join the lawsuit again, that where they were suing the Air Force, and I offered a compromise where we would offer an amicus curiae brief on two items, safety and noise, and we did do that, and that lawsuit played out in July in Rutland in 2017, and I think the suit was either dismissed or whenever it was denied. In 2018, a resolution very similar to this was proposed, and it was passed by council, I think probably 3-2 at that time. And since then, the F-16s have come. They arrived in 2019 in bits and pieces until they were all here. And
35s. 35.
What did I say?
You said 16.
F-35, sorry, F-35s. And so, and since then also, the makeup of the congressional delegation has changed. Senator Leahy has retired, has been replaced, and Becca Ballot is now our congressperson. So there is an opportunity to try this again to see if they would be sympathetic to a request from the various city councils in the towns and cities that immediately surround the airport that are affected by takeoff and landing noise from the F-35 to ask the Air Force if they could consider replacing the mission, right? That's not getting rid of the mission, but replacing the mission so that we would preserve our services at the fire department at the airport and preserve the economic activity by the National Guard. And so that's why we have the resolution in front of us tonight in its form. And I just want to say that, I respect the work and the commitment of the Air National Guard and that fighter wing and all the training and all the work they do. I know they serve an important purpose for the country in terms of national defense. And I don't want to diminish anything about their mission here at all. But this is an opportunity for the communities to state that the noise is an incompatible use, period. It's just an incompatible use. And I think most people who have stood in the wake of the F-35s taking off will agree that that noise level is very, very, very high. And there are some towns that are affected more than others. Just because of the F-16s, over the years before 2016, we lost 200 homes in the Chamberlain neighborhood. So if we had a quieter flight mission, that might not have happened in the past, right? So it would be, I think, important, and I think it's I think it's been important for us to understand the effect that the noise has on the surrounding communities and take this opportunity to pass this resolution to make the request. It is a resolution, simply. Burlington has passed it 11-1. Winooski passed it unanimously, I believe. Is that true? Do you know? Okay. Yeah. And so Winooski is affected, I think, more than South Burlington, right? And they have a larger share of lower income housing than South Burlington that is affected by the noise as well. So I think we have a responsibility to at least make this effort. I don't know if it will have an effect. I don't think anybody really knows. It could be years down the road. You know that the National Guard has invested over $100 million in refurbishing that complete base to facilitate the training and the operations of that jet fighter. But we won't know until we ask. And so I think that if there is this coalition of cities that make this request, that the delegation might actually listen and see what they can do. So I don't think it hurts to make the request. I think it's the right thing to do, and that's why I'm going to vote for it. Do we need to read the resolution? Does somebody want to read it?
Andrew and I were the ones that brought the resolution forward, and I'm certainly willing to read it. If waiving it is appropriate, that's fine with me too. I do want to say that whereas I might have chosen a different timing to bring this forward, because the cities of Burlington and Winooski have both brought this forward and voted on it, because we have thousands of our citizens in these three cities that are being dramatically impacted by intolerable noise, because sound mitigation will only help them in the few times when they are in their house with their doors and windows closed, will not help them if they go out in their yard, if their dog is playing, if they're putting the clothes out. That it's important to acknowledge that we have citizens who are being harmed every day. And like you, Tim, I also feel that it's very important to acknowledge the incredible value and service that VTANG provide to Vermont, to South Burlington and our communities and to our nation. And I think that knowing that initially the Air Force wanted the F-35 stationed at another location, and it was our delegation that persuaded them to bring it to Burlington, I think that we owe it to our citizens to at least ask. And so if people would like it read, I'd be happy to read it, but I'm also happy to waive the reading.
What's the council's? Shh. Go ahead, Elizabeth. Yeah.
Yeah, can I make some comments, Tim? Yeah, I jotted down some notes, so if you will indulge me, I'm just going to read through these. It won't take long. As Lori knows, I'm not a fan of resolutions, which come across as proclamations, particularly in areas where the council has no authority to take action. I'll also preface my comments against this resolution by saying I believe the quality of life for many South Burlington residents and for surrounding communities would be enhanced without the intermittent and often bone-jarring noise of the F-35s. The council recently sat through 2 strategic priorities meetings, and the topic of the F-35s was not mentioned once. The F-35s are not mentioned at all in the city plan. Lori, you were an architect as part of the Planning Commission in developing the city plan, taking a lot of community feedback. Tim and Andrew, you were on council approving the city plan. These are the guiding documents of council and staff work plans, and the F-35s are not mentioned in those. The rationale I've heard from proponents of a new resolution, despite asking for the same action in 2018, are reconfiguration of the congressional delegation with a new and junior rep, and the potential need for cover for our two most seasoned representatives to take a position which differs from their well-publicized supporting the F-35 mission as recently as 2023. Burlington passed a 9-page resolution in August. Winooski passed a 6-page resolution in September. Burlington is the largest city in the state and the home of our most senior congressional representative, who has avidly supported the F-35s and their mission. The Burlington Council, in the meantime, also extended the lease of the Air Guard by 25 years. Winooski is the smallest incorporated city in Chittenden County and represents one of the most diverse and marginalized communities impacted by the noise. Both communities have held non-binding votes of their electorates, which send the same message to the congressional delegation. This is not new information to our delegates. The notion that a council resolution from South Burlington will turn the tide is unfounded. I find it difficult to support a resolution with no teeth in it, and one which takes a position by a council which has not prioritized or planned for the consequences of urging our delegation to urge the Air Force to consider a different aviation mission for the Air Guard. I believe it's disingenuous to all our community to take this action with no plan or prioritization to do anything beyond the resolution. It seems to me the linchpin to any changes in the current mission is the appetite and capacity of the congressional delegation to make this a priority. As a council, we're authorized to direct our city manager to collaborate with surrounding cities and towns to seek an audience with our delegates, either as a group or individually, and ask that question directly. What is their appetite and what is their capacity to make this a priority? And should that be the council's will, I believe we'll have to revisit the recently adopted strategic priorities and policies. Thanks.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Andrew?
So I support the resolution. As Tim said, the noise from the F-35 is incompatible with residential neighborhoods. You know, I've stood there when the F-35s have flown overhead, and Elizabeth, as you acknowledge, it's just bone shattering. You can't move for a couple of minutes. You really can't think. You can't do anything. And I can't imagine what it must be like to live with that on a daily basis. So look, I've been on the base, the Guards base, a couple of times, and I fully respect the professionalism of the men and women of the Guard and on the base, and as well as the importance of the F-35s to the defense of the nation. And this resolution is not at all undermining those values and the importance of that. But if as this resolution requests, and if it will help at all, right, if it will help our congressional delegation at all, find a new mission that preserves the economic benefits of the base, reduces the noise, potentially allows us to reclaim the 200 homes, maybe save some money on soundproofing. Why would we not pass the resolution? I don't really see any harm. I see only potential upside, potential good, and honestly, I hope that we send the right message with our neighboring towns that this is something that's really important, and try and make this community a better place for all.
Thank you, Andrew. Mike, do you have a comment?
Sure. Yes. Much, Lori. Thank you. Okay. Having talked to people on all sides of this question and having done my research, I want to share the view I have formed. Given the troubling international environment, I am grateful and proud that our Vermont National Guard are fulfilling such a critical role, and I know others in our community share this view. That said, I acknowledge it would be ideal not to have the intermittent high decibel noise for 10 minutes a day, Tuesday through Friday, and 1 weekend a month. At the same time, as the Air Force Secretary indicated in 2018, if we lose the F-35 mission, there's no guarantee of a replacement air mission. The Vermont National Guard's Fire Brigade, which is predicated on an air mission, handles 15% of South Burlington's emergency calls. To replace it, the city's estimate, we would have to pay $20 million in construction costs for a fire substation and $1.5 to $2 million annually to operate it. I'm not sure we want to open this Pandora's box. Indeed, our senators have emphasized focusing on noise mitigation efforts, which Senator Welch underscored just last year, as does our recently adopted 2024 city plan. Advocating for increased federal funds to accelerate the mitigation effort is where I believe we can have the most impact. While not perfect, it would generate the quickest relief. But the question here is what action South Burlington wants to take given the pros and cons and different opinions. Thus, I propose, instead of adopting this resolution, we give our fellow residents a chance to express their opinions, as Burlington and Winooski did with their residents years ago, and put it on the ballot this March. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Are members of the audience that would like to comment? Roseanne, come on down. And if you're on remote, can you just raise your hand or turn on your camera so I can see that you want to speak? I can see Megan wants to speak, but good evening, Roseanne, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Roseanne Greco. I'm a resident of South Burlington, and you have never done this before. Winooski never did it. Burlington never did it. All the resolutions you passed were sent to the Air Force. No resolution has ever been passed that went to the congressional delegation. I want to make sure that that is clear. My remarks are going to be a little lengthier than they normally are, but I'm the only one here in person. All right. I hope you've all read the Burlington and the Winooski resolutions because, and by the way, I'm going to read this so I don't ramble, because they refute some of the disinformation that was promulgated during the basing process. Many people were rightly confused because of the intense lobbying and marketing slogans from the proponents and their accusations that people who opposed the weapons system were unpatriotic and disloyal to the members of the Vermont Air Guard. Hopefully the facts will help our elected officials, including you, to correct the mistakes of the past and work with the Air Force to get a replacement mission for VTANG, one that is compatible with the people who live and work around the airport. While the Burlington and Winooski resolutions contain a lot of data, other pertinent information was not included, and I'm not going to go into that. However, I do want to speak to a problem that has never been addressed, and that is the harm being done to the members of the Vermont Air Guard from the F-35. As a military veteran, I'm especially concerned about the well-being of military people. Tragically, past decisions made by senior government officials have done great harm to some members of the military. The public's well aware of the use of Agent Orange and the burn pits in the Middle East, but there are more. The military medical system and the VA are overwhelmed with treating members, some of whom were exposed to toxic materials and chemicals while performing their military duties. There is plenty of evidence that the toxicity of the advanced aerospace composite materials and the radar-absorbing chemicals, referred to as stealth coatings on the F-35, could be doing harm to military members. Our Air Guard members, like thousands of other Vermonters, are being harmed by the noise. But Guard members are exposed to additional dangers because they are in close proximity to the airframe. The Air Force Research Lab in the School of Aerospace Medicine has categorized the F-35 as the most dangerous aircraft in the Air Force inventory because of the large quantity of advanced aerospace composite materials within its airframe. The F-35 contains the largest amount of these materials of any other military aircraft, 42% by weight. By comparison, the F-16 contains between 2 and 13%. The dangers of the materials that make up the fuselage of the airframe should be reason to raise concern about the welfare of military personnel should there ever be a mishap. But the additional stealth coating applied to the F-35 may be even more dangerous, as it is likely a carcinogen. The stealth coating chips off during certain types of flight and has to be reapplied. The F-35 maintainers are advised to be in full hazmat suits when they work around the F-35 and reapply the coatings. It is impossible to get accurate information on the stealth coating because it's classified. However, because of a lawsuit filed by the widows and survivors of an incident years ago, we have some information on the dangers of stealth coating. 5 military contractors were told to observe the destruction of radar-absorbing chemicals. Coverage of this incident at Groom Lake, Nevada, which was even featured on a 60 Minutes episode. Two of the men were killed, rather gruesome deaths, and the other 3 were permanently disabled just from being close by. It is likely the F-35 is causing harm to a whole new population of military members. If you're concerned about the health and well-being of the Vermont Air Guard members, as I am, you will advocate for getting them a less lethal aircraft. There is no argument for the F-35 worth risking the health of our Vermont Guard members. They are willing to give their lives in defense of our country. The least we can do is protect them from avoidable harms. Just as the damaging effects of noise are cumulative in the human body, so are the carcinogenic materials. All resolutions are symbolic, but some carry more weight than others. This resolution is more than symbolic. This resolution calls for the protection of people, civilians and military. Of course, our delegation could do the right thing without a resolution, but the sad reality is they have not. As President Franklin Delano Roosevelt reportedly said, quote, "I agree with you, I want to do it, now make me do it," end quote. We should do everything we can to make them take action to protect Vermonters. Please think of our neighbors, especially the large population of people of color, refugees, and those of low income that live in Winooski and Burlington. Please be a good neighbor and join with the councilors and the mayors of Burlington and Winooski by voting for this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Roseanne. Megan, did you want to say something? You're muted.
Yes.
There you are.
Yes.
We hear you now.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. And I want to thank both Councilors Chalnick and Councilor Smith for having the leadership to bring this forward. I want to thank the council chair for having the leadership to vote in favor of it. Back in 2013, when this was approved by the Air Force, it was done with full knowledge that the environmental impact study cited Burlington Air Guard Base as the base where these environmental hazards to low income, to people who we classify as minorities, and I don't like that term, but people who are normally not represented by people who sit on boards or in the halls of Congress, that they are going to be inordinately impacted by this basing, and they have been. I know that these 3 of you were going door to door this past winter to be elected. I myself have done so for years, and I have been met with people at their doors in tears, not able to live in peace anymore since the basing of the F-35. You are not here to represent the Air Force. You are not here to represent our congressional delegation. They will do, as they have always done, a fine job representing our state and our state's interests. You are here, the 5 of you, to represent your constituents. And those who have the least voice among us have been asking for years for our council and our state and our Congress and Air Force to act in their better interests. Yes, we are at war. We are having, of course, to defend ourselves. Is the most densely populated area in our state the place for these planes? We'll leave that to the Air Force and our congressional delegation. But you are speaking for the people, and the people are saying they are suffering. And I thank the 3 of you for taking the leadership. I'm disappointed in 2 of you who are speaking for Congress, not having spoken to our congressmen and women, or for speaking for the Air Force. That conversation is not for us. Our conversation is for the people living here in South Burlington. And this is where our airport sits as well. So thank you. And I appreciate you taking this up, whether or not it is a priority. It is a time to act. And yes, let's let them know how the people of South Burlington would hope that our congressional delegation would take their interests into concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Anybody else online? I didn't see anybody. Nobody has their hand up. Okay. All right, and there's nobody left in the audience that wants to say anything, so. Can I have a motion to approve Resolution 2024-22?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Is there any last-minute discussion?
I did make a recommendation that we direct our city manager to collaborate with surrounding cities and towns to seek an audience with our delegates and ask that question about their capacity and appetite to take this issue on as an alternative to a resolution, which I think we have a history of not having much success with. And absent a community vote, I think this is a more active alternative that would represent our community well.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
And I would just add that I think the community vote is the right course of action. I'll just reinforce that. I think that is also the best way to communicate what indeed is the view of our community. And it will be a message, whatever it is, that will be more loudly heard by our congressional delegation than a resolution of this body.
Thanks, Mike.
I'd like to say that I support both what Mike is saying and what Elizabeth are saying. I don't think either of them are precluded by approving this resolution. And if it would, because I like consensus when we're able to reach it, if including that in this decision, saying that we want to move forward with those, would gain support for this measure, I would encourage us to entertain that. And one other thing that was mentioned last Saturday was that the wording in our therefore be it resolved doesn't talk about another air mission. It just talks about another mission. And if putting air mission in there would resolve the concerns that Mike had about losing an air mission, and that would get additional vote for, I would consider that as well. But I just wanted to say that I am not at all in disagreement with either of your suggestions.
So it doesn't say replace with air mission? Because I read it, but I must have.
It says, with a mission that causes no harmful noise to people living around the airport.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't say an air mission.
Right.
So if including that, those words were important to,
It's okay?
I'm happy.
I mean, I think it's implied because the
I'm happy with it the way it
included
is.
resolution talks
And
about
if,
an aircraft.
if making changes will not increase the vote count,
Yeah.
I would go for it the way it is. But if it would increase the vote count, I would go for that because I think the stronger the vote count, the stronger the resolution.
And I would say, even if it doesn't add vote count, right? I mean, I'd like to add that word. Yeah, even if, remember that even if you don't vote for the resolution, you're still allowed to sign it.
Right.
Remember that, all right? Because it's happened before.
I'll be, yes. I will, thank you very much, Laura. I really applaud your outreach and your thought. I still think the most effective way to communicate and speaking for our community is to listen to our community instead of us hypothesizing which of us understands our community's views more than the other. But I would hope that we could still, if you go forward with your resolution, I would hope you'd include the word air. I think that was a very astute observation. I would not vote for it because, again, I have my own views on the air mission, but I would still hope that we could put this issue on the ballot. But again, thank you for your comments.
If you bring that forward, I will sponsor it with you. Okay. And we can take it up with council.
And I just want to point out, even if it goes 3-2, that the two nay votes, you have not really, you are in agreement that the amount of noise is considerable and that it does have a negative impact on the communities. Is that true?
Yeah, I did specifically make that statement,
Yeah.
that I believe the
Yeah.
quality of life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So just bring that to light, that, you know. Okay, so let's,
So
are
if
you gonna
we,
make the change?
the friendly amendment would be to add, to remove the word "a" and put "an air mission"
Okay,
on the second to last line of the resolution.
all right.
And if we do that and approve it tonight, we then sign it at the next meeting?
Well,
Or would you-
opening it right now.
or would you reprint it right now?
So I think unintentionally I may have done a smart thing, which is the signature page is on a separate page from the
Yes,
language.
yes.
So I think you might be able to sign it, but can
Okay.
you just, with the mission, do you see where he's?
Tim, could I
Second
make,
to last line.
With an air mission. Yeah. Oh, wow, dynamic. Look at that. There we go.
Tim, can I make another quick comment?
Sure.
I believe the Winooski and Burlington resolutions include no adverse economic impact to the airport or the community, whereas this resolution does not.
I think it implies the fact that if it's another air emission, it shouldn't have a significant economic impact.
And this resolution is expressly in support of both Winooski's and Burlington's resolution. So it implies that as well.
Oh, I can't write it. Okay. All right, we ready for the vote? Okay, all those in favor of this resolution with a friendly amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Elizabeth and Mike voted nay. Sue, just so you know. And the motion passes. Resolution passes. Thank you very much. Thank you, audience. That was the quickest F-35 discussion I've ever seen in my life.
That was my goal.
And now we're going to go to agenda item 12, which is discuss the Coffee with the Councilor engagement program and determine the next steps. I have to confess, I've only been to one, and I partially apologize, but Saturday mornings are a really special time of the week for me because I work 5 days, and and there's something I like to.
Excuse Tim.
I really like to go running on the waterfront, and the morning is better than the afternoon for my energy level, and it's like the one aesthetically wonderful day of the week, that I get. So, if it was
You put in your fair share, so it's
so if it happened at a later time in the afternoon, I'd be glad to participate more often. So, anyway.
Well, one thing we were going to discuss in this is whether the times and places are ideal and whether there should be times for people like you who like to run in the morning that are appropriate so that other members can join. I've enjoyed doing it in the schools. I've been, I understand why, but I regret that it costs us $60 a pop to do it. Not that that's going to break our budget or make the school budget. But one thing I was going to suggest, every meeting I've been at, people say we want this to continue. And one thing I was going to suggest is that we consider doing at least some of the meetings at our local businesses, our local coffee shops near City Center, on Williston Road, on Shelburne Road, so that they're reaching the same parts of our community, but they're also supporting our business owners. So I wanted to put that out as something. I wonder whether there's a way to do something sometime at the north end of the city near Lime Kiln in that area to enable the folks that live out there to have a chance to more easily get access to us. But I think it's been a resounding success from my perspective.
Our only brewery is out there.
What?
Our only brewery in the city is out by Lime.
I would love to do it at a brewery. I'd love to do it at a brewery at 5 o'clock in an afternoon sometime.
Sorry.
I also, I know these meetings go too long, they just get slap happy. I also have the sense that people have really enjoyed it, and as you've said, have really appreciated it. Some people come right regularly, and I think they will be regulars, and they love the ability to just continue to engage in conversation. But I think, and that's good in itself. But I think the real good thing is every time I see a new face, to be honest, to me that's always the real joy is saying, wow, there's someone who's going to tell me something that perhaps I don't know about what's important in the city. And if we can come around a way where we can move it around town a little bit, maybe that would. My only concern about putting it in a place where people have to pay, as bad as it sounds, some people don't want to pay. For them, for you and I, it may not be anything to just pay that, $5, $10 for a coffee. For someone else, they'll say, do I really want to do that with my time? Even though I have, something I want to share. So I would want to try to create the entrance bar quite low. I think one thing that if we did it once a month, as I guess Elizabeth suggested in that one email she sent to us, it would create a chance to, it was like the first Saturday of every month, and we had a much more active role with Andy, sort of building it up, 3 weeks out, 2 weeks out, 1 week out, as well as us on it. Because part of it, I think, is just getting the information out. I think we've heard some people say they know about it, but they always think about it at the last minute. And, like you have your habits, and to break into that window, that habit is going to be hard. But I'm up for whatever we can do and whatever it takes to keep this going, because for me, it's been incredibly useful.
So I think it's been useful too, for sure. I think we could probably host a few of them in the library. Obviously not convenient for the entire city, but would be convenient for many. And I think it's probably, I don't know, in my mind, a little bit better space than we have been holding them in. I know one time we showed up and the school wasn't open. We had to sit behind in those little picnic tables, which wasn't ideal, but it worked. But I mean, the library is a great space. We should utilize it.
I think that if we do it with our local businesses, we might be able to have them sponsor us. But I would also be willing to, we've been buying the coffee. I would be more than willing to say, come and let us buy coffee for you. So that's not an issue, and we could have the owners just open a tab for the day, and we can do that, and it would be less than $60. So, does it make sense to try and, I like the idea of setting the same times that people build familiarity, but it seems like there are times when people, not everybody can come at that time. Does it make sense to have other dates and times that work?
And there is also the catch-22, if you have it at the same place every time, that also is familiarity. On the other hand, it doesn't bring it necessarily to that neighborhood versus that neighborhood. So it's I guess we'll just have to take a decision and try it.
Would we want Andy to propose different locations?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. And I just, it has to be a quiet place. If I get into like a restaurant or something like that, and there's a lot of background noise, I have
not
a hard
just you.
time.
There are, you're absolutely right. We have to be sensitive
Just
to that.
for my deaf ears.
And I love the idea of having, even reaching out to BCBA and suggesting that they be a sponsor for Coffee with the Counselor.
Blue Cross Blue Shield?
No, I'm sorry, I meant SBBA.
Okay.
Sorry, I meant SBBA.
Okay, yeah.
Or On Logic or whoever.
Yeah.
That it could be something that really becomes a community engagement piece too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I shared some of my notes and observations. One of the things that, despite the expense associated with, custodial staff opening the schools and so forth, is we do have a goal that kind of lost its way during the pandemic of the city council trying to hold a couple meetings at schools, our regularly scheduled meetings. That actually is in our
Charter.
Yeah, charter. Yeah, yeah, that charter.
That little thing.
So I don't know that this, stands in for that, but I do think I think we've accomplished a lot in terms of getting people into the schools that normally wouldn't be in schools. I think it does reflect the neighborhood meeting place. So I think it has a lot of kind of shared goals in our collaboration with the school district. But I certainly think there's other opportunities for meeting, and I think maybe Andy would be a good person to propose those. I think I highlighted in my notes, and maybe all of you have felt this as well, that some coordinated ramp up to the meeting times through more social media, things like that, I think would help. You know, a group, I think I've been in some with groups that are about 12 or 13, and that's a good group to have. Much more than that, I think you'd use up your time with, you know, that's the right, to me, a good size of a group. And the dialogue's been very robust with smaller groups too. The question I had put in my note too, is this something we wanted to consider expanding or inviting some school board representation? Because we do get a lot of dialogue about schools, particularly budget time, but also include our legislators as well. So there's an opportunity for sort of hearing shared information. Just a thought.
May I add a few thoughts? So I think Andy is eager to help support however he can in this. I like everything you're talking about. I guess I would ask or pose one of the things. So at your next meeting, you're going to hear about the equity toolkit. And one of the things that we talked to you about at the beginning of that, and you'll hear about at the next meeting, is the importance of kind of closing the loop on what you're hearing. And I think that hasn't necessarily been important yet because it's a new thing we're starting up, and and you're listening and you're getting in information. But I think especially as we get into the budget time, there's going to come a time when you need to champion back out what the city is doing and not just take in the concerns and complaints. So I would just put it out there. If there's something that staff can do to help you, provide you resources to share at meetings or something like that, that helps close that loop, helps say this is what we're doing, about kind of your either frequently asked questions or meetings around that you have, or coffees that you have around the budget time, or coffees you have around big LDR amendments or something like that. We're happy to do that. I'm a little hesitant to offer that staff goes with you because they work a lot. I'm taking their Saturday morning seems a little mean. But if there's, promotional materials, we're happy to provide those. The last thing is that I
Stickers?
hear stickers, absolutely, 100%. I'm going to bring you all packets of stickers. We're writing it down right now. I hear a lot about, we're not doing enough in communications and pushing out messages. We can always do better at pushing out messages. One of my hesitancies about that is too many places where we're trying to do the same thing and things getting lost in translation. So one of the things that I think would be really helpful for us is if you could help promote city news. The more people, we have about 2,000 people signed up for city news, which is great, but the more people who think of that as a resource of somewhere to go for updates, even if they're not reading every one, they know it's in their inbox and they can check on it. That would be super helpful for us.
On the city news question, I don't know, is it possible to hand it out when someone comes out to vote? Something that says, how is that crossing? I mean, we have BCA, we're all on the, again, it's trying to, those are at least people who are active taking the initiative to vote.
Yeah.
Or
I'll
maybe
check
when you,
with
or
Holly
maybe when
about
you
that.
send out the, maybe not in the, this round of vote, they're all going out from the state. But, next year when we send out could we insert? Because
I'll ask Holly.
Because and also I think your idea about having some feedback is great, because I think that will actually drive more people to come out if they see that actually, something comes from me showing up, because you often hear, I've raised my voice, I'm not heard, so why come back?
Right.
With regard to your question about closing the loop, at one of our meetings, we actually took down email addresses so that we could recontact folks. But if staff were able to, if we had an email form that we got people to sign when they come, and if we as counselors write down the concerns that people have with their names, and then we hand that in to somebody at staff so that it can be, the email names can be kept track of and the information could be disseminated to all of the counselors about the questions that have come up. we try to do that at the beginning of our meetings, but it might be a cleaner way to keep track of the questions that have been raised and be able to then push back to those emails answers.
So I love the idea of collecting emails, and I think that might be easier than trying to ask people to next go sign up for City News. Like if they just give us emails, we can sign them up for City News.
Yes.
Honestly, my first reaction to like file all your complaints with us and we will email you back on Monday morning thing is, I need
That's not
you
what I
all
was
to be
suggesting.
champions. Like it will be stronger messaging coming from you.
Yes.
You know, this is what the city is doing. Here's the answer to it. And I don't know all those answers, so I certainly don't expect you all to know all those answers. But the more we can make you into champions, the
What I was
better.
thinking was that if those questions all went to staff, like you said, a lot of them are questions I don't have the answer to, and someone could do just a little bit and then get back to me and say, here's the answer, email Amy and let her know.
Or you could just ask the questions in one email.
Yeah, but I'm trying to get someone else to help me.
Well, yeah, but then you could respond to people personally, because that gives a personal touch to it
Yes,
as well.
well, I would be responding personally, once I got the information back.
Yeah, I think my own feeling is it would be a big ask to not only be the one to interpret what is being asked, but then to rely on that secondhand information for a staff member to respond. So where I've gotten specific questions, I'll ask the question and then forward the response on to the community member. If I can't answer or find it on my own after the fact. And I do think that reinforces kind of the fact that we are listening and getting back to people who have asked questions.
But like a lot of the comments I've heard are not necessarily questions, but comments about policy. And, you know, what I try and do, I hope we all do that, is reflect those comments and then bring that to the conversation, right? To our sessions, right? And that's what we're supposed to be doing. You know, if they're operational questions, you know, they're not really ours, right? But the policies are things we need to be closely listening to and then reflect that.
Agreed. So shall Andy bring you back kind of a calendar of things? Do you want to go through town meeting? Do you want to go through 12 months?
Let's give it another 6 months. I mean, we just last 4 months and we seem to have liked it. Let's give us 6 months because it's a little, because are we going to do it once a month? Or are we going to continue to do it bi-weekly? I guess that's the big question.
If we intend to use the schools at all, we will need to get on that calendar because I think we finish up with one more meeting, I think.
Yes, just one more.
And you've been keeping up a pace of twice a month?
I think they're.
Yes.
You think that's too much?
Yeah, I mean, I recommended going to once a month. My only caution with that right now is we're coming into budget season, so kind of consistent with Jesse's comments about an opportunity to get information out as well. It might be a good idea to, through the end of the year, to keep twice a
Or
month.
through the end of the budget, which is what in January we adopted, right? So maybe up through the budget and then reflect on how it's going in this new setup and then maybe then shift to 1 month if it seems, because I mean, this is the time when people do get the most interested, money being spent.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I'm just thinking about coming up onto the holidays. If we're trying to do every third Saturday, you might run into holiday things. And I have in my head the calendar of like when the budget will be presented, when the public hearing will be, when we'll start doing publicity around town meeting. Why don't we put together a calendar that's a little more around what's going to be happening rather than every third Saturday, and bring that to you and you guys can take a look at it.
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Anything else about that? Okay, moving on to item 13, discussion and possible action to review the significant agenda topics below for council's regular meeting on October 21st, which is our next meeting, being the Faith Influence Leaders presentation on youth mental health, Wagner Hodgkin's presentation on the City Green concepts and discuss next steps and presentation from staff on equity and planning efforts and next steps for the City Council, and also update on the NEIT Longview property project.
Sorry, I forgot the C sub-bullet there.
C.
That's 4 things and I only.
Oh, it is. Oh,
sub-bullet
okay.
them
Oh, okay. Yeah, it
times.
is. All right. C. D. I just, see, I fixed it.
Thanks.
There's 4.
It's B1 and B2.
Unrelated.
Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Proposed agenda? Yeah, okay. Moving on to item 14, which is convene as the Liquor Commission. Can I have a motion to enter as Liquor Commission?
So moved.
Seconded.
We have a motion second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are now the Liquor Control Commission, and we have to review an application for the rotisserie outside consumption permit. It's getting cold.
I move
So-
to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. It's unanimous. Now I need a motion to come out of liquor
moved.
control.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we are now at other business. Is there any other business?
Yes, please. So I would like to request that at a future city council meeting, could be the next agenda if there's room, or whatever makes sense, that we discuss the letter that we received from Robin Jeffers on behalf of Common Roots on August 8th, where she asked us to consider helping Common Roots fund some hoop houses, some greenhouses. Yeah.
I'd like to second that.
Do you want me to offer the next 2 council meeting dates and see when they can attend?
Sure.
Is there any other
Are you,
business?
are you saying beyond the 21st? 'Cause that's pretty,
I was thinking offering October 21st and then November 4th or whatever the next meeting is. Giving them 2 options of dates to attend.
I'm just looking at what we have on this October 21st agenda already. You want to put the 2 dates in November?
So here's my small concern with November dates. In theory, committees are bringing you work plans, so those might fill up, they might not. I haven't gotten, actually, if you as liaisons can help get me dates on whenever your committees want to come to the council, that would be awesome. Having said that, I'm happy to move it to a November date if the just
Jesse,
approved.
You use your discretion and where there's an agenda, where there's room.
Okay.
Thank you.
I had a quick one, Tim.
Yep.
Just, I don't know where we stand on other paper articles from the council.
Oh, City Councilor Corner.
Yeah, so
Right.
just wanted to go through that schedule.
So one issue there is that I think they forbid articles from councilors approaching reelection.
What?
at 6 months?
Oh, I thought it was once papers were pulled. So
No, because I got heavy criticism from them back in August or September of 2022 when I wrote an article, and they didn't want to publish it, but they did. So maybe let me, unless you want to, I mean, I can review, because you're up for, if you're running again, I'm up for election, and nobody else, the rest of you are not, right? Just the 2 of us, right? So,
We just clarify that policy
yeah,
with them?
I'll find
Yeah.
out. Let me write that down. TOP. But there's a name for that. What is that? It's not franking? Is it franking privileges? No, there's some weird like DC term for when you abuse your privileges, like your social media privileges for your own reelection purposes, right? Is that the word? Come on, you got DC experience. Do I have to look it up?
Re-elected or elected in DC.
Well, it wouldn't prevent 3 counselors from getting information out. And I don't know what the rotation is anymore, so.
Well, franking is a postage thing. Okay, but anyway, but there is something.
I have something.
So I'm going to assume that I'm not allowed to, just because of my experience in the past. But what was the last month that had an article in it? Was it September? You had one.
I think Elizabeth's was last, and I was before her.
Okay.
And I was
So
before
August or
you.
September?
I was before you.
You're before me, and-
Yeah.
Okay, so. August, okay. So there's
Was
three
that
of you
before you
that
or
could
after
write
you?
starting
Before you.
for November. Want to do that, or October if you want? I'm sure they'd love to take something. October, November, December? Then we'll know.
I'll do November.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want
We
to,
could move November, December, January.
November, December, January.
Okay, so November,
I'll do
December?
December, sure.
January?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that it for other people, other business?
So
Wait.
the January one really, the December and January one should, at my request, have a little bit about the budget
Oh,
in
yeah.
them.
Oh, yeah.
No, but that was
So
the- yeah, that-
I'm happy to help
Sure,
with whatever you
sure.
need for that.
Great. No other business?
Yes, one other thing, I wanted to revisit what we talked about, the local option tax. After the local option tax. After Tim mentioned that Tom Chinton had engaged in that, I did some research, and it looked like the Senate twice looked at an issue of expanding municipalities' ability to have more freedom or flexibility on the local option tax, but it did not pass the House. So I spoke to some of our member of our Senate and member of our legislature from our area, and they said, you know, the best way for us to visit that issue would be to pass a resolution, crafted obviously by the city, to say what would we want to have our city to be able to do with local auction tax. And I think if I understood correctly from Jesse last time, it was to basically have more understanding of the receipts. You know, who is basically generating this local option tax revenues for us, which would then allow us to make, as a city, decisions that may help facilitate growth, the local option tax. Not touch how much is split between the city and the state, because I heard that is going to be, you know, we'll just never get accepted. And the one other thing I was told that the state taxation authority always uses is that this is confidential information. You know, most municipalities in Vermont do not have the staff capabilities to keep the confidentiality. My understanding is that Burlington, obviously we know Burlington has great capacity in this area and freedom. Apparently St. Albans, I'm told, and Rutland, but Jesse's looking into it, have also some great flexibility. I think it's worth us in our effort to have revenue models that we push forward in the retreat to basically empower our city to have as much flexibility in this area. And I would just suggest that we ask Jesse to basically look into this issue, write a resolution that we would support and send to our state legislatures, being Senate and the House, to see if they would push forward at the state level some changes that would give us greater ability to maximize our lot. My understanding, it would be a resolution. But if you want to put it on the ballot, I'm happy to do that too.
That would be a very hard thing to educate,
Yeah.
to put on the ballot.
Yeah, we don't need a charter change for that. We just need the state to give us more information. And Tom has said, Tom Chittenden has said that they need legislation to do that.
Yes,
That's
they would
what
need
that's what he said,
Okay.
yeah.
So, but if we crystallize what it is we
It
want
just-
in a resolution, then we can hand it to them and say,
Exactly, it's
please
simple,
go craft this
right.
legislation.
And send it to both House, and he said Senate and the House, because the House has so far not been very open to this issue.
What committee does that go to? Would it go to?
Government operations, probably.
I mean, does that, it seems that if we're trying to empower ourselves, it seems like it's worth trying.
It's going to be a very short resolution.
Well, so if you guys want to move that forward, my friendly amendment to that is that I think we will have a window of opportunity between election day and the start of the biennium where they could be crafting legislation. So it might, if we really want to push on this, it might be good to have something ready to go in November so they can work with
I'll work with
Legislative
Mike on that
Council.
if we need to do that, right?
I think there are some questions that I would have about, do we just want to say what we want, or do we want to actually try and propose legislation? For example, if you have local options tax receipts over $1 million and have professional accounting staff on staff, then to take away I think the argument is in towns with one hotel and one retail shop and one bar, you blow all business confidentiality. But if you hit a certain number, then that's probably less concerning. Okay, I'll draft something. Yes.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's only
Well
10
done,
to 10.
team. Done.